Okay, I make a motion to go into executive session.
A second?
Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
And at this
Like
time, let the
stereo.
record reflect that Councilwoman Doyle is absent. And the time is 6:34.
Okay, I make a motion to return to regular meeting from executive session.
I'll second that.
7:08. Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
Please rise and salute the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Emergency exits are to my right behind the town attorney and also the door you came in. Roll, please.
Supervisor Perotti?
Here.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Here.
Gutierrez?
Here.
Blackman?
Here.
Revillard?
Here.
Public comment?
Sally. You were the first one here. Did you want to go first? Yeah.
Okay, I'm Sally Nelligan Leaf from Wassaic, New York. I watched the minutes from the last meeting, and I got the impression that it was all determined that the park across from the Lantern in Wassaic was going to be torn down for more parking area for the new businesses. Now, I think the businesses, the Lantern, Wassaic Project, the new Wassaic Commons, I think they're doing a terrific job, and that is just great. But maybe before they bought the places, they should have checked out the parking. And I also feel that the logistics in Wassaic could be worked out so that there's no problem with the parking. But some people seem to think that it isn't a park, it gets called as a planter. And I know that it's been there since 1950 because the building between the Lantern and the next white building was a restaurant and a store with an apartment over it from 1950 to 61. It was Jim Nelligan's restaurant and store. He was my father. And we were there, and the train station was there, and the park was there. And I also received a phone call from someone. Of course, we don't have anything in writing, but in 1945, after the war was over, there was a big meeting in the park there, what is called the park, across from the Lantern, 1945. So it does at least go back then, but I know it goes a lot farther. So Donnie was partly right, and that's how I got involved with this. I watched the minutes that night and heard about all these things that were going to happen. And the park is in good condition. The cement blocks, Stanley told me, were put in 1999, and I checked them all. They're all in good shape. The top of the park looks terrible because the trees were cut down a few days before Christmas, which was completely unnecessary, and left until now, and it's just a mess there. And by it being left that long, I got very nervous that something else was planned and that it was not going to be fixed. Let's see what else I had to say. And the railroad station, I don't remember when that was taken down, but it wasn't, the railroad train didn't come through after 1972. That was shut down. But I know the train still came through to Triwall, to the box factory. And there's no reason that we should lose that park. The parking places can be made someplace else, and somehow or other, a tree, a Christmas tree and whatever, can be figured out for that park, and some benches. And when you go the front of the park, if you're just walking up like I walk up with my dogs, you can just sit on the blocks. But when you go to the back, turn around the back of the park towards the railroad, the cement blocks are just a little bit above the ground, and it's one step up. You don't need a handrail or anything, and that is fine. And that's all I'm going to say because some other people want to talk. Thank you.
Next.
30. Nope. Sharon's third. Sharon asked you third.
I'm Bob Bergfeld from Wassaic. I've spent my entire life there. I would really feel poor about seeing the park go. We've lost many landmarks in Wassaic. The schoolhouse is now a private residence. The post office has become a residence. The IGA store, of course, is now the post office, and it's we're losing the town one piece at a time. As far as the park goes, Donnie Cummings and myself and Nancy have been doing a lot of work down there. It was bad timing on the trees, but we were after the town for a while to get them out of there because the pine tree was dead. It looked like a Snoopy tree. And the maple tree had outgrown the park so much that it kept tearing up the American flags. We couldn't keep flags. We trimmed it 2 or 3 times and it come right back. So it was time for that too. Timing was a little off right before Christmas, but that's what happened. So the park's been there for many, many years. If anybody saw on Facebook this week, there was a postcard on there from old Wassaic. It was taken up by the railroad crossing. It shows Wassaic with a dirt road that hadn't been paved yet. In front of the railroad station is what I would call a Model T. It looks too old to be a Model A Ford. And looking past the railroad station, you can clearly see that park in existence. So that puts it back in the early 1900s. And the green barn is there behind it. So the sad part is that they, as Nancy said, it can be worked out for parking. The Lantern has extra land there around. They're now procuring Brian Whalen's property in the back. That's under this thing. The house next to it has been empty and vacant for years, and I've heard that it's not worth redoing. I don't see why they can't level that and put parking down through there. And right now, if you go down there when there's a crowd, they park around behind the park with 2 or 3 cars. If the park was taken out and the parking was straightened out, you'd still only get 1 or 2 more. And the lower end of the parking lot right now is taken up because the Lantern has their dumpsters there. And I don't know why they have them on town property, but that's getting away with it. So if they cleaned up the place a little more there, they would have a little more room. That telephone pole right in the middle of the parking area should be moved back to the sidewalk side. The only reason that was out there originally was because it was for the railroad station. Other than that, that's about all I have.
Next.
Sharon, that makes 3.
Sharon Kroger. I'm the storekeeper on Main Street in Wassaic. I'm hoping to help you think about this maybe differently than you might have been. First, a little bit about the context in which we are and the problems that we're looking at. In order to address current civic issues in Wassaic, it may be helpful to briefly review how some earlier problems have been defined and then addressed, all differently in different ways in the recent past. Consider, after the new concrete bridge was built, it became a battleground for drive-through teenage graffiti statements for kids driving between Millerton and Dover. That was a problem, and Wise B. Nelligan had a terrific idea. She organized nearby homeowners and property owners to address the problem by taking up a collection to commission artist Kathy Clegg to paint the mural on the Main Street Bridge, which actually won the Dutchess County Public Health Award in 2003. It solved the problem of graffiti for a good decade or 2. Secondly, when the hamlet was in danger of losing both an important local business and a historic landmark building, it was necessary for us to create a different kind of solution. We made a proper nonprofit organization capable of both ownership and fundraising to put Max and Mills on the State Register of Historic Places and find some new ownership. Thirdly, when the railroad consolidation destroyed the hamlet's regular transportation, because you could go up and down the railroad easily in those days before that option was taken away, it destroyed the link to the outside world. And county planning made an additional mistake of creating an isolated rural end-of-the-line station. And how did we solve that? A local citizens committee of residents, Wassaic residents, with expertise, settled down and worked for years on what later became called the Trail to the Train, so that there is now a link from the isolated station to the hamlet and to the rest of the world. And the possibility of a new bicycle shop now developing can become a possibility. Of course, there are many other unsolved problems, and it's important to understand what's at stake in each situation because it's not always clear immediately. And good solutions need to be worked through, not just announced and pursued quickly. My two current public concerns are these. One, it would be very serious. It would be a very serious planning and development area for this town board to perceive the public island park in Wassaic, which holds the American flag, the tree lighted at holiday time, the special lighting paid for with community development grants, and stonework rebuilt by Stanley Whitehead in 2004 as merely some kind of planter. It's not just some kind of planter. This is in reality a necessary, shared, common space where the customs and rituals required to bind a civil society together are focused and have taken place for many long years. Candidates of all kinds get to put their political signs on that shared public space and state their differing opinions. But it is necessary to protect that unified collective identity at the same time by protecting that public space. The shared rituals that take place there over the years belong to everyone. We are not just dealing with several businesses and an imperfect planter here. Secondly, parking needs to be understood more broadly. Wassaic is a pedestrian hamlet, a historic pedestrian hamlet, with 3 large parking lots, other than the old railroad parking in front of the Lantern, as well as a main street 2 blocks long with parking on both sides. At B. Nelligan's funeral at the chapel, it brought over 200 cars, and they were distributed nicely amongst the firehouse, grain elevator, and factory parking lots, although some folks did a little walking as well to get to the chapel. Now, people can generally do a little walking as well as parking, and to have to walk a block or so and park is not a hardship. So I suggest that you think about that as in a broader sense than just what's in front of that little area. Now, in about the last 20 years, I've never actually come to this body and talked about something for me. I've always talked public issues, public benefits. Now, I'm going to make one request. The function of that general store, that historic general store standing on the river at number 4 Main Street, this store functions as an anchor business on Main Street and continues with permanent pandemic hours even now, 2:30 till 6 daily. We also serve as a co-op for small family farms and need at least 2 marked permanent parking spaces so that bulky pickups can continue to take place even when the Lantern and Main Street parking is filling up toward the evening. And I'm going to ask this board, as part of its deliberations, to make sure that I get a marking so that 2 spaces will be available. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Margie O'Brien. Full name is Margaret O'Brien. And I'd like to echo a lot of what Sharon had just said about the spaces that we have, the public spaces, like in Fountain Square in Wassaic, the Triangle in Amenia Union, and I don't know if there's anything similar to that in, the other...
Smithfield?
Smithfield, thank you, I'm not sure if there is. But they are very important spaces. They help to define an area. They're just a community spot, and I think they should be, they're very important, so they should be enhanced and highlighted. I am a member of the enhancement committee, so this is, I'm also giving my opinion that way, but I think that area, Wassaic, the Main Street has grown so much, and I think that I think when it was initially put in, I can't imagine that they've realized how large and how important the whole area has become. So it is, and it is a lovely little area. But as a member of the enhancement committee, I would think about how can it be enhanced? How could it be useful for the people who have businesses there? For anyone who drives by, how can it be more welcoming? How can it just be improved? And if there are issues with it that can be addressed, my opinion would be that it could be also changed in order to accommodate things, a reorientation of it, pushing back of it. It shouldn't disappear completely, but perhaps things could be, the stones that were there can be used in a different way to create a more inviting space with more space for parking. So I was not under the impression after listening to last week's meeting that it was going to be taken out. That was not my impression at all. So I think it's very important, and it should be valued and as a public space. But I think it also can be enhanced for the way the town has grown, the little community has grown, so that it can be something of great beauty and enhanced with more plantings, another tree perhaps, something like that. So that's all I had to say.
Anyone else?
Nope.
Hi, my name is Nancy Richards. I was raised in Wassaic. I was going to touch on to a lot of what everyone has already spoke about. But what I would like to say is I believe a community is made up of the people. The people make the history, as do the buildings, and this little island park should be no different. And I was a bit disturbed when I watched the meeting from a few weeks ago. And at the end of the meeting, it said that the board would make the final decision. And I was hoping that, we know that that is town property, but town property belongs to everyone. So I'm hoping that further discussion, you include everyone. There are many that have deep roots there and passion, and that's about all I can say because, like I said, everyone else has mentioned everything else. But I did grow up there when there were many booming businesses. There were businesses on both ends of the hamlet, and that little island wasn't an issue. So if we can work around and come together and compromise in some way, but I do believe it should be saved. Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
I have something to say then. Oh, I'm sorry.
This is not about that park.
You need,
You're absolutely welcome. Just come up to the podium and state your name so everyone can, we might know, but.
Hi, good evening. I'm Frank Spano. My wife Elizabeth is here with me. We're from Amenia. We live just outside of what Victoria corrected me, it's not the village, but we call it the village, the little commercial
It's your
district.
village. Yes.
We're in that little residential area that sort of surrounds 343, 22, and our little street comes in right through the rail trail parking lot. Over the past year, we've had, well, over the past number of years, we've had a number of issues. They've all become resolved with the help of Victoria, with the help of the town, the county. At times, we had our county sheriff and our county executive step in to heal some of the problems that were occurring because of the rail trail parking lot. We love the rail trail. We live right along it. There's about 500 feet of it that run right along the edge of my property. And we access it. Our company accesses it, and we love it. One thing that has presented as a problem has been illicit activities that go on in that parking lot. I would like to thank everyone. I've extended my thanks to Lisa from the Hudson Valley Rail Trail, to Suzanne from the county parks, the county police, the state police, to Megan from the highway department. I understand that a lot of the trash has just recently all been cleaned up from that area at our requests, and I do appreciate that. We appreciate it. We live there. We drive through that parking lot every day. And it's not just us. There were 2 homes on that little street, but there are homes on Railroad Avenue, up Depot Hill Road, on Powder House and Prospect. That all is our neighborhood. And it's very important to us and the safety of our families and our children. Some of the issues, I don't know if everybody's aware of them, but there have been illegal parking overnight, extended, and sometimes there have been cars planted in the parking lot for weeks and months. We've gone through many efforts to get them removed without, we didn't want to put anybody in harm's way. We didn't want them ticketed. We didn't want them towed. We just wanted them to know that they can't park there at night. And the problem with them parking there at night is that it encourages other activities. And those other activities, as we all know, we have a drug problem in this town. We're not alone. There are drug problems in every town in this country. When there are cars parked intermittently in that parking lot, and there have been 2, 3, 5, as many as 12 cars parked overnight in the parking lot. And that doesn't occur any longer. As of 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, the activities of everyone involved, and I failed to mention an agency that I didn't even know existed, that we have 2 state parks police people. They were also very helpful in doing this. I understand proper signage is being created so that everybody is legally covered as to making certain that there is no overnight parking in the lot. And the activities that go on down there are people driving in and out in between the cars that are parked and purchasing drugs, buying drugs, doing drugs, selling drugs, and other kinds of activities that leave residue behind in the morning. I used to go down on a weekly basis with a bag of garbage and gauntlet gloves to clean up some of the things that were left behind along the parking area. Not pleasant, and not the type of thing that children should see or anyone should actually see in public. I don't want to mention the items, but I'm sure you all have good imaginations. Since the parking has stopped, the activity has stopped. From our house, we're up high on the hill, and I'm a little bit of an insomniac, so at night I can actually see the lights of cars pulling in and out, and in and out, in between the parked cars that are down there. We want to make certain that this, the efforts that everyone has been involved in order to alleviate this potential for illicit activities continues, and that we don't have or create a new problem. It's come to my attention now that we have a potential for a electronic vehicle parking station in that parking lot. I would like to know more about that. We didn't know anything about it. None of our neighbors did. I have spoken to many of the neighbors, some of whom we're designer, architect, developers. We've improved their homes in our very neighborhood. We don't normally do that. We build homes all over Dutchess County, but because they're friends and neighbors, we've helped them. And it's been wonderful working with our town, with the zoning board, with the building department, sometimes with Victoria. You've all been very cooperative and helpful, and it's improved the area by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Which helps our tax roll as well, which helps raise the entire town, and that's all good. But we're a family neighborhood. We've got kids, lots of kids. Some of you live right in that neighborhood. Unfortunately, most of you don't, so you probably don't see a lot of what goes on there. There are some very nice homes. There are some lovely people. There are some weekenders. There's a lot of children. There's a couple of buildings that they're a little sketchy. I think you all know which ones they are. But everybody has to live, and we're okay with that. What we don't want to do is create a new issue where we'll have another reason for people to be coming to that parking lot at night, parking there, leaving their car there for 15, 20, whatever it is. If it's a high-speed charger, 20 minutes, a half an hour should do it, but still, that's a half an hour. What is that person going to do if they're going there at night? They're going to walk around? Is somebody else going to pull in alongside of them? Now, are we going to have to be concerned that there's cars coming in and out of that lot at night with our children in our homes? And what other activity goes on? Very shortly, they will be delivering the porta-san to that parking area. That becomes another issue. I've spoken with the rail trail people about it, and they've been very cooperative. They're very nice, and they're very good to deal with. But there's not a lot that they can do. Hopefully, our policing of the area will help, but once that unit is there are activities that go on inside of it, behind it, around it, and you can tell by the debris that's left behind the next morning. So I want to make everyone aware of these things, and I would like to make certain that you folks make us and keep us aware of anything that's going to affect the immediate area. We consider that to be our village. We love Amenia. We relocated here as weekenders. We loved it so much we decided to move in. We gave up Westchester to come here, and we've absolutely loved it. So let's all discuss these items, and I know if anything is going to be coming up about any changes to that area, we need to be notified, we need to be involved in the discussions about it, and I think all agencies that are involved need to be involved in it, making certain that everything remains safe for our town and our children and our little village. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks. I wanted to say something about Wassaic, but thank you for your comments about Amenia.
Can I just say one word about the
Oh, yeah,
EV charging
please, I'm sorry.
station? So that was the Conservation Advisory Council and the Climate Smart Task Force that applied for that grant, and we were just notified that we were a recipient of that grant. And I, too, am very concerned about how that, those 2 parking spaces that would be reserved specifically for charging only. You can't park in those spaces, you know, as the grant was written. It has to be for people who are actively charging their cars. And as part of the grant application, there was a very in-depth required plan for all kinds of things, like how you were going to sign it, how you were going to make sure that the cars that are parked there for the rail trail use but aren't charging their car, how are you going to police that? Lots of different questions. You know, if there's vandalism, how are you going to deal with that? Who's going to be in charge at town hall? And literally there were 4 or 5, you know, who's going to make sure that if it's snowing out, that it's still accessible to the charging station. So there's a lot of questions that they had to ask up front, and there's a lot of more paperwork, MOUs that have to be done before we ever get to the point where we actually build and install this. So all those questions would be working hand in glove. Not only would you as landowners know what we were able to work out, but we have to have an MOU signed. As you may know, it's the state parks that owns the rail trail and a lot of that parking lot. State parks, it's maintained by the Department of Public Works. So there's three entities, the town of Amenia, the state parks, and Robert Belkind has been working with us on behalf of the county, who maintains that parking lot for us. So that is all, the county assured me, Robert Belkind, that they have similar EV charging stations at the walkway over the Hudson, and he helped guide the appropriate signage, the appropriate answers, and how that can be maintained and managed properly. But I agree, we have to think it out very carefully before we do anything and make sure that we can actually maintain those spaces as they would have to be maintained. That's, it's a grant. We have to provide the service that we've just gotten the grant to do.
Can I comment about something you just said? One of the items I mentioned before was that we've had issues in the past and that they've been resolved, but it took an act of Congress basically to get it to happen. At one time, up until I believe 6 years ago, there were only parking spaces as you enter the rail trail parking lot from Mechanic Street. There were only parking spaces on the right-hand side, which is state or county or parks property. Our road rides right through the center of that, and then the land to the left of that is, I'm not sure, but I believe, I've been told it is town land. But town and state have coverage over it.
So the town owns a portion of that?
Yes.
Yeah.
And through great efforts, we ended up with 4 more parking spaces added to that side about 6 years ago, because we had an issue where ambulances and fire trucks could not get up our street because people would just abandon their vehicles on the paved area, which was our roadway, because there were not enough parking spaces. So at this point, there still aren't enough parking spaces. During the summer, you will find cars parked down Railroad Avenue.
Yeah.
You'll find cars parked on a diagonal at the crossroad between Depot Hill, Mechanic Street, and Railroad Avenue. Basically, people just look for a spot of curb or roadside and just leave their car there. So we don't have enough spaces now. If you take 2 spaces away, how are you going to plan for all of the traffic? The bike path is very active, and we love it. It's a great boon to our community to have it. But it is in the middle of a residential area. There's homes all around it. So if you're going to create another issue where now you're going to have more cars, we don't have, street parking spaces. Mechanic Street is narrow. And when cars start parking on both sides of it to utilize the rail trail, it becomes a 1-lane road for cars to get by. So, what do? Put up no parking signs, and then where do people park? Yeah. So there's a lot of things to be concerned about. We would like to, will we be notified and will we be part of the discussion about all of this? Because we haven't been up to date. We didn't know a grant existed. We didn't know a grant was being applied for. Shame on us.
No,
we should probably know these things, but we didn't.
The reality is, you write for grants, it's like winning the lottery. Most of the time it doesn't. So, and just because you got a grant doesn't mean that you can actually execute it. So there's hoops that we need to to jump through, serious ones, an MOU, memo of understanding, who's going to do what, when, where, how. And if you want to be a contact person so that as that's being hammered out and we understand, more and more specifically who's in charge of what aspect, I'd be happy to make sure that you're in the loop when those details start
Good.
taking firmer shape.
Thank you, Vicki.
Yeah.
And I guess the other thing is, right now, only 6% of the vehicles in the United States are EV cars. But that's going to change.
Right.
And I think the thing we have to think about is you're going to be putting what will ultimately become a gas station in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Now you have traffic.
Yep.
So now you have environmental concerns with regard to traffic to and from and is 2 going to be enough? 2 will never be enough.
No.
Well, are there going to be 20? Should there just be a station someplace where there are 20 electronic vehicle charging stations? I think we have to look further than here and start looking out further as to what are the solutions going to be. Our president tells us that by 2027 he wants there to be no more non-electric vehicles sold. Well, that's not that far off. So one charging station in the middle of the bike path parking lot is not going to be effective as far as that goes. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment? Leo, did you want to say something?
I did want to say something. So I feel somewhat responsible for this upset about Wassaic. We talked the last meeting or the one before about replacing the trees and what sort of trees, and I said, we should look at the whole space, because it seems to me you could probably plant more trees there if the parking were rationalized, if it wasn't just this free-for-all on Friday and Saturday nights, and that if you had marked spaces, you could also have places where you could plant trees so that there might be some shade. So then it sort of spun out of control since then. I appreciate that Sally educated me about the specific history of the park. And I went back to look at it, and I realized you actually can get in fairly easily from the back side of it. It isn't as high as I thought it was. What I had suggested, and I spoke to Lauren Wass, who's your co-chair, and I don't know if you two spoke about it, but what I had suggested was that Enhancement sort of take the lead on this and put together public meetings to kind of get input from everyone in town. I don't think there was any intent to kind of design this and not tell anyone about it. We're not great at communicating, I will admit, but I think it's just because it hadn't been figured out yet. And I was the one who sort of threw a wrench in the works by saying, well, why don't we look at the whole thing and see if we can improve the whole space, not just the park, maybe even expand the park. And so that's apparently, that kind of escalated into upsetting a bunch of people. So I want to apologize for upsetting everyone, but I still think it's worth considering whether that space can be improved in addition to just replanting the same trees that were there.
Is there any other public comment? If not, then supervisor's report. The Highway Garage and Salt Shed, Lobella Engineering will be presenting a concept plan at the May 18th meeting. CDBG Route 44 sidewalk grant, Lobella Engineering is monitoring changes in construction costs. We'll be doing rebid in May. Wassaic Pocket Park, there is no plan to remove the small park across from the lantern. The trees that were removed had diseases, and one was rotted out in its center in addition to damaging the flag there. The tree stumps will be ground down once the electrical is marked out.
Which they were doing today. I saw them today when I went by.
I know, I talked to Megan, I had her have them do it. Amenia Water District, waiting for $481,000 grant funds to be received. However, because of 2024 deadline, amount of work that needs to be done for the lead and copper inventory, information will be sent out shortly to all of the Water District customers in order to begin the process. Hazardous weather and other notifications. In order for people to be made aware of hazardous weather conditions and other emergency situations, Dutchess County has created a free app for cell phones called Ready Dutchess. Once the app is installed, you will be notified of any impending conditions. The app will let you know when there is a message, in addition to having other helpful information. Town of Amenia website and Channel 22. Administrators for the website are Annette Culligan at extension 105 and Nancy Nowak at extension 108, who can add items to the website as requested by organizations, committees, and boards. Events by organizations, churches, and schools can be advertised on local Channel 22 by sending information to Amenia TV at ameniany.gov. Town of Amenia COVID-19. Amenia town offices are open Monday through Thursday. Masks are optional and are available in an envelope on the second set of doors. Signing the visitor log is required. COVID-19 test kits are available for anyone who needs one. COVID-19 vaccine information. Vaccine appointments for homebound people can be made by calling 845-486-2555. COVID-19 vaccines and booster shots are available at Amenia Drugs. Call for appointment 845-373-8000. CVS pharmacies, go online to schedule an appointment. Town clerk report.
Good evening. This evening, I'm presenting to the board 2 resignations. I'm in receipt of Munar Ahmed's resignation from the Housing Board and Bill Flood from the Water District Committee.
I'll make a motion that we accept both resignations with regret.
I'll second.
Didn't mean to look at you like that, Leo. Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes. Sorry, Dawn. I relayed this to Manower, but I have a note from her saying that she has also resigned from the Comprehensive Plan Committee. I said she might need to send an official note. Not sure.
You have that in writing? Just go ahead and forward that over to my office so
Great.
I can file it.
I will do
So
that.
do you want to move that then? And
Yes,
accept?
I'll move to accept Manower Ahmed's resignation with regret from the Comprehensive Plan Committee.
Thank you.
Second?
Supervisor, oh, she,
Oh, did you? Sorry.
Doyle. Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
I'm also acknowledging, I know it is an item that's on this evening's agenda, but the circulation from our highway superintendent, their certificate and notice to close the highway, along with the request, but that is an agenda item this evening. I do know that the board had the opportunity to have interviews prior to the beginning of this evening's meeting. Did you guys have the opportunity to discuss those candidates, and would you like to move forward with anyone this evening?
I'll make a motion that we appoint Mary Ann Snow Pitts, to the Enhancement Committee.
Second.
Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'd make a motion that we appoint Nadine Makura to the Ethics Board.
Second.
And that'll be for the unexpired term, expiring on 12/31 of 2027.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Supervisor Perotti?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
And I have a concern about the third candidate in terms of conflict of interest, and I think we should discuss that before we make a decision.
Not a problem.
Okay.
Also presenting to the town board this evening after review, and I know several of you have had the opportunity to review, and it's our vouchers on the abstract dated April 17th of 2023. I'm presenting to you guys general fund, following amounts: $117,266.09. Highway Fund, $33,376.32. Amenia Lighting, $1,097.76. Wasaik Lighting, $407.48. Amenia Water, $12,861.39, for an abstract this evening that I'm seeking authorization for the supervisor to pay claims is $165,009.04.
I so move.
Second.
Leo. Supervisor Brody?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revillard?
Yes.
Also acknowledging receipt and circulation of the following reports. The Building Inspector Code Enforcement Report for the month ending of March. This summary does include the total number of receipts for Title CO searches for residential and commercial, his building permits issued. So for the total building department, March income is $54,824.75. Also noting on this report that there are 4 violations that were issued during the month of March. Also acknowledging circulation to the board prior to the meeting is the March monthly from SEBI Environmental Services. Does indicate the number of total of gallons pumped. He does indicate customer calls, water line markouts, emergency response and repairs, and any other projects that he has worked on. Also in our packets and received via email is our report from our recreation director on the state. She does go ahead and itemize the upcoming programs and updates. She did ask, since she wasn't able to be here this evening, that I do acknowledge that we currently have for recreation, the Maplebrook School and Amenia Recreation are hosting a seniors next Saturday, 4/29, for games and social hours in the dining hall located at the Maplebrook School. On April 22nd, she's going to be assisting with the Earth Day activities that are going to be happening here at Town Hall, and she's helping with the sports swap. There's currently offering an adult puzzle day with the Amenia Free Library, which is held here on April 24th in our Town Hall gym. The first Kids Circle was held yesterday. If anyone's interested in signing up, it's not too late. This program goes through June 7th. Tai Chi is currently happening every Wednesday nights here at the Town Hall. The Weebatuck Community Day is going to be May 13th from 10 to 2. Summer Music Series is going to be starting on July 10th. It's going to be here at the Town Hall. I believe it's planning on the lower fields beginning at 6 p.m. And the Senior Picnic is booked for July 29th. Stressing and emphasizing the need of our summer camp counselors, summer camp supervisor, or summer camp nurse. In order for our camp registrations to even open, we need to have a staff. So, reaching out to all of our community parents that are currently watching this evening, if you have a child who is interested in becoming employed by the town of Amenia and serving in any of those positions, or you yourself are currently a nurse or an EMT and are interested in filling those open positions, please give us a call here at the Town Hall. Katie can be reached Monday through Friday at area code 845-373-8860, extension 124. You can also visit our website to get some more information on our employment opportunities. If we do not have those positions filled, it won't be shocked when you find out there's no summer camp. So we need staff. The new basketball nets went up in the gym, and they're going to be putting up the basketball court outside. So here at Town Hall and at Wasake Park, I know she's working on that. And our playground mulch for all 3 playgrounds has been ordered and will be delivered this upcoming week. And she's currently working on the town mailer to go to our residents. So Katie's doing a lot here with rec. If you guys have any ideas, questions, concerns, please give her a call. She's pleasant to speak with and has a great ear and is trying to bring us as much rec as we can here.
And I want to thank her for how much she's done in the short time she's been in the job.
A lot of
That's
energy,
great.
a lot of energy. So we got a lot going on. I know that we all remember Councilwoman Samoji. She is still currently working on our senior trips. She did ask me to announce that at the Dutch Treat Lunch that's going to be held Friday, May 12th at noon. It's at Four Brothers. It's an opportunity for our seniors to get together. You are paying for your own lunch, so I guess that's the Dutch treat part. But she wanted me to announce that there's going to be music there. So if you want to have a nice lunch and enjoy some music, please join them at Four Brothers, May 12th. And they are going to be talking about upcoming senior trips and events. So give Michelle a call at area code 845-877 9430 if you're interested in kind of RSVPing, so they can make sure they have enough marked out, so you guys can enjoy some social time together. That's all the fun, exciting stuff. So much going on right here at Town Hall. How can you not?
Highway Department?
Yeah, she can give her own report.
The light pole in Wassaic, the one that got hit a couple years ago, has been ordered. He's guessing roughly around August that it will be in, so hopefully we can get it in shortly after that. And yes, the Wassaic Park, the 3 lights have been marked with the electric. So is that what we definitely want to do? You want to grind the stumps?
Yes.
Okay, because I did talk to Sean, and Sean was worried about stump grinding and hitting any electric.
Well, that's why we had it marked out.
Yep.
That electric tree that you worked on, putting it in.
Maybe, yeah. So yeah, he came out either last night or early this morning and got it all marked.
Good. Now we know where it is.
Yep. There's a lot of red flags out there now. Also, Fountain Square, the lights, 3 lights that were out, Lacurdo came and fixed, and the top of the, one of the heavy winds that we had, one of the lights tops had came down.
The globe.
The globe. I picked that up. It's not broke. Lacurdo put that up also. Jim. We've taken down some unsafe trees ourselves where we can. All our roads have been swept from winter. We went around also cleaning up any lawns that the plows got, and some intersections. And we've been grading our dirt roads. We have 1 more to go, Tower Hill. And tomorrow the plan is to go around and pick up some garbage where we can find on any of our town roads.
I have a question. When they were, when Lacurdo was looking at the lights in Fountain Square, was he able to do an inventory of how many had been converted to LED and how many weren't? Or is that?
He was supposed to. I haven't heard from him yet.
Okay, thanks.
That's all I have.
Thanks.
Thank you. Recreation Commission.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, this is my 4th meeting this week. It's been a long week. So, Rec Commission is very happy with Katie Sark-Garrity. She's been doing an excellent job with ramping up rec, working with outreaching with other people in the community. We're very happy with what she's working on, and we're very pleased that she has joined us. So something that we've been working on and the public knows about is we're working on bringing out a 5-year plan for improving our parks in the area. So for Wassaic particularly, we've had a couple agreements made in the past couple weeks. One is with DEC, which is the 9 acres to the south of Wassaic Park. We would connect Wassaic Park and the DEC land and create more fishing walking areas so you could access Wassaic Creek so you could fish more. Wassaic Project and Pauling Corp. have offered land that where Borden Park is and where Gridley Church is, so we can take the playground and bring it up out of Wassaic Park and bring it to the center of town. And then also Wassaic Project has offered land next to Luther Barn where we could establish like a BMX skateboard park. So we received letters of intent with that. So with that said, that has increased the scope for our architect, our landscape architect. And we asked her to give us a rough idea of what it would cost to include these other 3 pieces of property, and that came out to roughly about $3,900. We believe that we could take that $3,900 from the, what's it called, the cell tower fund, or?
Savings account.
So we just need clarification from the town board if that's something where we can actually access the cash, because we would prefer to take the cash from there rather than asking the town board to give us the money.
Well, I have a question about you even using that money for land that the town does not own. There are some legalities that have to be looked at when you're putting town equipment on property that the town does not own.
So-
And this time, I'd like to make a motion to have the town attorney look into those legalities before we authorize any funds being moved.
Okay, so all 3 properties have made a letter of intent?
Which is meaningless in a legalese sense.
Right,
It's a letter.
okay.
So
we're-
we need to do our due diligence to protect the town.
Understandable. All right, so with that
And is
said,
there a second to my motion?
I'll second that.
sorry.
Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revelard?
Yes.
All right, so the next item that we have been working on is trying to improve the concession stand. We've asked our town board liaison, Mr. Leo Blackman, since he has a lot of architecture experience, to work with the Board of Health, working with Weavatuck Little League and with the Rec Commission to find a way to bring it up to date, at least to the point that we would be able to sell items from the concession stand this year. We don't have an exact number yet. We hope to have that number within the next 2 weeks, and then we'll return back to the town board, and that's another issue that we're going to have to deal with to try to find money, and we will also turn to the capital fund for that. The next thing that happened this past week is the HVA came to our Rec Commission and explained to us what a LFA is, which is a local flood analysis, and that's for down in Wassaic. And the good thing, the thing about this flood analysis is we've always had a problem in Wassaic with flooding, right? It's always been an issue. And if we're going to ever fix that, we got to apply for grants. And we can't get the grants unless we do our homework first. And basically, that's what this LFA is. So we would ask the town board to become the lead in this, take the lead in this, and apply for this grant this year. It's our understanding that the grant is becomes available sometime in May, and the ending is sometime in June or early July. We have a short period of time to get this, so we hope that you guys work with HVA to work on this.
Well, the grant is for $100,000 with a 25% match.
That's correct, but it does not have to be just all in money. It can also be in kind
But
of
the
work.
$75,000 is money. Is it reimbursement, or would we get the funds up front?
I can't speak clearly to that because I have just started learning about it this past week. Ms. Claire could answer that clearly.
I'm happy to answer questions.
We do have
Yeah.
some questions, yeah.
Thanks. Hello. I'll just introduce myself. I'm Claire Way. I'm the 10 Mile River Watershed Manager for the Housatonic Valley Association. The Housatonic Valley Association is the nonprofit organization that works to protect and improve water quality in the Housatonic River Valley. The 10 Mile River is an important tributary to the Housatonic, and Wassaic and Weavatuck creeks are relatively clean and really beautiful and important parts of our watershed. So part of my job is to coordinate a group called the 10 Mile River Collaborative, which you might be familiar with. It's a group of representatives from municipalities, other conservation organizations, business owners, and citizens who come together to talk about river management strategies and address watershed issues collaboratively. That group put together a document called the 10 Mile Watershed Plan, which is a technical document that outlines all kinds of assets and concerns in the 10 Mile Watershed. And that document is a living document that's intended to support municipalities seeking grant funding to improve water quality or address infrastructure issues in their towns. There are some projects outlined in the plan that are right in the center of Wassaic in the area that we've been talking about. Some of those are failing retaining walls that are currently channelizing the creek right through the center of town. And that is, with flooding heights increasing, that is a safety concern, I know, and so my job is to work to complete projects outlined in the plan and support towns completing those projects. I brought up a grant called the Local Waterfront Revitalization Program, which is a Department of State grant program that funds local waterfront revitalization, which is an important part of all of the projects that we've been talking about today. That grant would fund what's called a local flood analysis, which is an engineering feasibility study that would look at what would happen to the water if we do anything in that area, from repairing retaining walls to putting in a dock for fishing access to extending floodplains. The creek is a living thing, and I certainly don't know if you repair a retaining wall on one side of town, if that will affect flood heights on the other side of town. I started at my current position in November. I have gotten some backstory about the history of how HVA and the town of Amenia have worked together in the past. I know that my predecessor worked with the town board to try to apply to this grant last year, and the application wasn't submitted. So I'm here to try again, and I'm happy to answer any questions about details about the application.
I do have some questions.
Yeah, please.
So we never really got to the point of coming up with an accurate funding request amount. So
Right.
You, as the HVA, would be, if the town agreed to be the lead applicant on this second attempt at a submission, you would work with us to try and analyze what the scope, narrow down the actual scope of the geographic area that you would be looking at. I assume it's just right in the hamlet of Wassaic from the description, correct?
Correct. I mean, so there's mapped floodplain in that area, and I don't know the details of that border off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So it would be, I'm not sure the exact border of it, but that would be a part of the application, is to include detailed maps about what exactly we're looking at.
And that is a skill set that you, as the HVA, can help bring to this application, is that correct?
We would, so the
Or do we need?
HVA is not qualified to do the actual flood analysis. It would have to be a subcontractor engineering firm. And we have worked with firms in the past to do similar projects with similar scopes of work. So we would make a recommendation as to put out an RFP, and then, it would ultimately be the town's decision about who you find best to work with.
That
So
would
the
be
grant-
assuming we got the grant.
Yeah, if we get so the grant funds are to be used to pay the engineer for this feasibility study?
Correct.
And
And
you'll be looking at, I know there's a couple of areas in Wassaic, where there's receding, like shoreline. I know next to the firehouse is a scary part too, where the bank has been receding for years. So I just wondered about the scope. Are you looking at one particular area, or are you looking at areas that look like they could, cause problems in the future?
Yes to both. I mean, ideally, this would support the town in all future projects. The $100,000 that was on the draft abstract that I sent to you, that was just a number,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
We can adjust that pending more information.
But I just want to be clear on what the number is being spent on. Is it be spent on an engineer
It would be
to
spent
do
on
the
an
feasibility
engineer.
study?
Correct. And they
Okay.
would do the hydrogeologic study of
Right.
that area. And they would also take into account the Recreation Commission's designs, the community's input about best use of that land.
Mm-hmm.
I have no opinion about what the best use of your town land is. I just want you to have the best information possible to make those decisions. You don't want to put in anything now that might get flooded in 20 years.
Well, yeah, right. So it would be a flood analysis of the endangered areas of Wassaic.
And the engineering firm would, the goal of the output would be to give you a report of what is the most cost to benefit analysis of all of the recreation enhancement opportunities, waterfront access opportunities, as well as fixing infrastructure.
And then this report could be used to apply for other funds should we need to do repair?
Exactly. It would strengthen any grant applications down the line.
Okay.
And so I think a part of that grant application, or I'm not sure how this came up, that the town would help identify and create a waterfront advisory committee.
So that's one of the requirements of this grant. It's to make sure that all of the stakeholders in the area that we're looking at know what's going on and are on board. So that group would be called the Waterfront Advisory Committee, and that would, of course, include the town board, the Recreation Commission, local business owners, community members, the DEC. I know Trout Unlimited has worked with us in the past, and they would be involved to whatever extent would be helpful.
And obviously that would include the property owners.
Yes.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah,
Okay.
the Passaic project, Pauling
Whoever
Court.
owns
Yeah.
property along those corridors that are in danger of.
And the fire department.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I speak to this?
If you come up to the microphone.
I want to say that it appears that some of the watershed folks, not just in this watershed, but in the Hudson watershed as well, are on a model of waterside, riverside, or lakeside modeling for their ideas of participation. I just want to say that this board needs to remember that Wassaic is different from all those other places. And what I mean is that when you ask the county, what they'll tell you is it's a canaled hamlet. In other words, it's different from all those lakeside situations where you do things like the development of San Antonio and that kind of thing. You've really got a place where they built up, like in Holland, it's think European, where they built up dikes and fill-ins in order to make bridges. So there were many bridges, and it's 300 years old, most of the underneath, and they did this stuff in order to have a railroad and a main street and water power. So it is not the same as all the other hamlets.
This would be tailored to whatever Wassaic is.
I'm not saying no, I'm just saying this board has a right to see that as different. Another thing I want to say is that we are a crossroads hamlet, and that never came home to me as heavily as one day when there was an accident on Highway 22, and all the traffic was routed from north-south. Traffic was routed from 22 over to 7 in Connecticut, and in order to get there, they had to go down Furnace Bank Road like this, just miles of cars, and everything in the hamlet had to get out of the way so this traffic could be trained through. This was the interstate connection. And so we are, in some degree, impacted by stuff that happens elsewhere that we don't control. And it's easy to forget it until you have a crisis. And I think we had another crisis when one truck came, and it was just that much taller than all the stuff that was above and yanked the wires. So keep in mind that you might not want 2 or 3 intermediary organizations between you and who's doing your engineering studies. You might just want to do it directly.
Sharon, the point of this is actually to reinforce or rebuild those sidewalls. I noticed actually today on from my bicycle that the one directly across the creek from your store is actually leaning at a 30-degree angle. So I think the idea is to actually preserve the canal effect and to be able to quantify how much flooding there'll be. So I think that all that will be explained to the whatever engineer gets.
You might not want 2 or 3 organizations.
Please, Sharon, don't shout out from the audience. You're done. Go ahead.
Okay, so the last item is we're getting ready to release our plans, and part of our drawings include creating a town green here in the lawn next to the town hall. And last week, Mr. Leo Blackman reminded the commission that previously there had been other ideas other than recreation going along the edge of the lawn there. So what we need from the town board is any drawings or any ideas that, or previous year ideas that have been put out there, so we can combine those or look at those and see if we're going to be able to make them work, because we don't want to, you know, like create a section of recreation that cannot be used for like maybe business expansion or housing expansion.
What ideas are we?
Well, the idea is that
was talking.
the only idea is that this parcel is basically the only open land in the hamlet, and so if there's going to be additional business growth or residential growth, housing, that's a logical place to look first. So what I said to Paul is just that recreation doesn't own that property, and it has to go through a number of steps before making a decision about how that gets used. And
so before we started working on this idea of creating it into a town green, we did our homework and reached out to DEC. The land down here is a flood zone, and it's owned by the U.S. Army of Engineers. There's also two endangered species that live behind the town hall here. One is a bog turtle, and one is a timber rattlesnake, apparently. Who knew that we had rattlesnakes here in Amenia? But that's what
We've
DEC
got
says.
lots of them. Wait till it gets a drought and they start coming down from the hills.
So, with, you know, because we were worried about creating this idea that we wouldn't even be able to implement because of all these issues.
They are.
So they said that what we wanted to do, you know, create the lawn so it doesn't flood so much anymore, put a little splash pad here to the back left-hand side of the town hall, and put a like a pavilion so that we could have activities in the center of town and a place for the residents to meet. They felt that that would be doable. They told us that they weren't so sure if we would ever be able to build like a business or housing there because there's just too many hoops to jump over. So we just want a clarification, so before we go any further, waste any more money, town money, on what we're going to do here. I mean, the town has gotten really behind the idea of a town green, but we're also very aware that the town needs to grow over the next 30, 50 years. So what we're asking from the town board is to give us some clarification on how you think we should proceed in the next month or so.
I think you should proceed with the concession stand and see how much that's going to cost.
That's the concession stand. We're working on multiple
We
things
do
at
not have
once.
anything in the budget to do anything with the grounds around here.
I'm sorry?
There is no money in the budget to do what you're talking about.
Right, so what the idea is, we got to create a plan first, right? We can't go for grants unless we have a drawing and an idea and buy-in from the town board or the town itself as a whole that we want to do this. We can go, you know, to some state fund or some federal fund and say, hey, give me $1 million to make a nice...
We're not even going there because we don't have anything. There are some, the DEC actually came and looked at this a long time ago. But I don't know, I can see if I can find if there's any records of it.
What I'm trying to say is if we don't create our plan, we can't even apply for grants in the first
Well,
place.
why would you want to apply when you don't even have a plan?
But that's what
Can I
towards.
jump, guys? Can I just jump in here? So, as to the best of my recollection, there has been no decision by this board about any future use of that land out there for any particular purpose whatsoever. So insofar as the Rec Commission, which, you know, you guys are tasked with thinking about recreational opportunities in this town, expanding them, new ideas, by all means proceed with coming up with some ideas for what you think should go there, soliciting town, you know, resident feedback about those things, and presenting that to the town board. I don't think that there could be multiple ideas about what could happen in that space, but, you know, there hasn't been any decision made, and I think it's a great, you know, it's well within your mandate to come up with an idea to figure that out. As far as like finding... Say again?
I'm sorry?
I know, I was just going to say, as far as funding engineer or landscape designer to draft ideas, Also, I mean, if that's within your budget to do and you guys vote and recommend that that's how you should spend those monies, then do that and bring that to us and we'll.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks.
Any other committee reports?
Only the planning board. The planning board is continuing to look at the Troutbeck proposal. The town engineer went through it in some detail at the last planning board meeting, and there was also an environmentalist that reviewed some of the issues with water and wildlife. And both of them seem fairly convinced that the damage to those two things would be minimal, but there was a lot of discussion back and forth.
I had a meeting with the CAC, and that was last night here at Town Hall. Earth Day cleanup begins at 9 a.m. on Saturday, April 22nd. Both the CAC and the enhancement are co-sponsoring Earth Day activities throughout the town on Saturday. But the cleanup begins, like I said, at 9 a.m. and you can either meet at Borden Park in Wassaic or at Fountain Square in Amenia to sign up and get reflective vests. Wonderful Enhancement Committee used their fall mum money to in fact buy reflective vests for people who want to work on the town highways because they are very, very full of litter. And we can take them to Welsh Sanitation Transfer Station by noon, all the litter and junk on the sides of the roads and on the trail for free. I can get rid of it and we'll have a utility trailer, and you can call 845-489-7826 if you have bags of stuff that you want to locate at a certain area, and we'll swing by and pick it up. If you're on the state roads, we have two different volunteers spearheading Route 22 cleanup. That's Marianne Pitts, and another group that's doing Dollar General towards Sharon for a mile. And they will have bags and they'll have vests, and you can leave your bags on the side of the road because those are DOT state adopt a highway program. So that's all happening from 9 until noon. And from noon to 4 p.m. is the first annual Earth Day celebration that we're going to have right here at Town Hall. It's going to offer composting demonstrations, and they're going to raffle off a free composting system that was donated. And we're going to have a first ever repair cafe for clothes. If you have lamps that need to be, rewired, knife sharpening, lots of different things that you can bring your items that need repair. We've got clever people in the community who are donating their time. There's also organizational information tables that will be offered, and a sports equipment swap that if you have gently used sports equipment your kids have outgrown, you could swap that for, you can bring it and and see other things. We can't take helmets, but other than that, it's a great opportunity. I even have a hula hoop, just whatever you have. We would be able to swap that and offer it for free. I did want to mention that the CAC voted last night in favor of supporting the application by the town of Amenia for the funding that we just described. That would be for funding a local flood analysis, the LFA, from the local waterfront revitalization program offered by the Department of State, and that HVA is willing to help us complete and submit. I would just want to mention that the CAC has been involved for many years in the 10 Mile River Collaborative, and that has been spearheaded by the Housatonic Valley Association with all different organizations, from frogs to town CACs, and all different organizations in the 10 Mile River watershed have been working collaborative to protect the water quality and to promote this watershed management plan that is really intended to cross borders. Amenia just has one tiny section of the 10 Mile River watershed portion, but we understand we're all affected. So whatever Dover does, is affected down to Pauling, and whatever Millerton does affects us. So we all want to work collaborative to make sure that the water quality stays good and the flood mitigation measures, we're all cooperating on the same page, and also offering recreational opportunities where they present themselves. So that was our first collaborative, and this LFA would really be specific to Amenia and trying to do our first efforts to try and do flood mitigation, be ahead of the curve instead of only just reacting when the floods occur. That's all I have. Thank you.
Vicki, the LFA application is due the end of June?
I think it's the end of July, but...
It's in July.
Yeah, go ahead. It's May that she wants to get feedback from the Department of State.
So hello. This year's request for applications is not open yet. Last year, it was open May 2nd, and the deadline for applications was July 29th. Once the request for applications is available, the Department of State can't speak about applications in progress. So we have a window before the application period is open for us to get in touch with them and to hear what kind of applications they're looking for this year, make sure they know that we're applying. I also, just a note, we would support the grant application process. The town would be the lead on the grant. HVA is not eligible to apply for the grant, only towns are. We just have resources available to you to support the application itself.
Thanks. I will be very, very brief. The Water Committee met on the 10th last week on Monday. We did not have a quorum. We were unable to elect a chair or a secretary. We will be circulating a new time and date for that next meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to get those positions established then. I will be reaching out to the Ethics Committee now that we have a full committee and scheduling that first meeting so I can elect a chair and a secretary as well. One small programming note for the audience, since we have a large audience today. We have a number of very long-winded resolutions coming up. One is to approve the community college ESL contract. The next is to approve changes to the employee handbook.
Some of those are going to be tabled.
Great. I don't know which ones, but these are the ones that are on there. I'm just saying, if you would like to watch those on TV from the comfort of your home, we won't be offended if you would like to step out now. That's just a suggestion. But
Are there any more committee reports?
Yeah, I have Great Cape posted the first enhancement committee meeting on the 12th here in Amenia, and just want to bring up a couple of important points that we now have co-chairs is Margie O'Brien and Lauren Wass, and a lot of things that I would talk about, Vicki has covered. So
the cleanup day, yeah.
Cleanup day, don't forget that one. What else is, and the vests are in apparently. We voted to have reflective vests so we can safely walk along the roads and pick up the trash. We discussed the budget and everything was voted on. And I think those are the important things for the moment. The planning of the beds would take place on Saturday, May 20th, 8 to 11. This is in Fountain Park, I believe, Fountain Square Park. And those are the most important points at this moment. Thank you.
Are there any more committee reports? No? Okay, resolution extending Dutchess Community College ESL contract. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm having a difficult time hearing most of what's going on here tonight, and I don't have any trouble hearing it at home. Why would there be such a difference?
I think because we're speaking into microphones, so it goes. I don't even know it's that. I think it's just the acoustics of this room.
It's not just me, so I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you.
appreciate that.
If you turned it up, that would be great.
Turn what up?
Just check.
I don't think we have any
You
speakers
hear
in
us
here.
because it goes into the system, and here it's, like
There's
we're
no
talking in a
speaker.
room. There's no speaker. It's not, loud.
Oh, can you turn it
It's not
up?
very loud, because we can't, sometimes I can't.
Depends on the people how they speak in the microphone. Some come real loud and other people are back.
But back there, she can't hear.
If it's all balanced.
Could you please sit down so we can go on with the meeting?
She's leaving.
Resolution extending Dutchess Community College ESL contract. We're tabling it this to May 4th because we haven't received the new contract. They want to continue having classes through the summer. Resolution for employee handbook update approval. We haven't updated our employee handbook since 2013. And I just found out today from the company to do the update that New York State has passed new sexual harassment regulations, and we'll be adding those to the employee handbook. So I am tabling that to give him a chance to add that to it. So we won't be voting on that until May 4th. Resolution for accepting donation for batting cage at Beekman Park. Resolution number?
This evening, we're beginning with 54.
Authorizing Town Board of the Town of Amenia to accept a donation of a batting cage from Weebatuck Baseball Little League. Whereas the Town of Amenia Recreation Commission sought to replace the existing batting cage at Beekman Park last year, but wasn't able to do so due to budgetary constraints. Whereas the Weebatuck Baseball Little League, a not-for-profit organization under their own direction and control, raised the funds necessary to contract with Adams Fences to purchase a new batting cage. Whereas Weebatuck Little League has offered to donate the batting cage to the Town of Amenia Recreation Commission to replace the existing batting cage at Beekman Park. Whereas pursuant to Town Law Section 64-8, the Town Board of the Town of Amenia may take by gift, bequest, or device and hold real and personal property absolutely or in trust for parks or gardens, or for the erection of statues, monuments, buildings, or structures, or for any public use upon such terms or conditions or may be prescribed by the grantor or donor and accepted by said town, and provide for the proper administration of the same. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Amenia would like to graciously accept this generous gift from Weebatuck Little League to replace the existing batting cage at Beekman Park to be used by the Town of Amenia Recreation Commission for recreation purposes. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. The recitations above are set forth are incorporated in this resolution as if fully set forth and adopted herein. The Town Board of the Town of Amenia, on behalf of all residents of the Town of Amenia, hereby graciously accepts this generous donation from Weebatuck Baseball Little League for the purposes set forth in this resolution. And I make that motion.
Second.
Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Revelard?
Yes.
Resolution number 55. Resolution authorizing closure of Furnace Bank Road for Wausau Community Day. Whereas the Wausau project will be hosting Wausau Community Day on Saturday, May 20th, 2023. Whereas Jeff Barnett-Winsby, co-executive director of the Wausau project, has requested the closure of Furnace Bank Road between Old Cross Road and Nelson Hill Road during the time of this event for public safety reasons. Whereas pursuant to Section 104 of the Highway Law, the Town of Amenia Highway Superintendent has filed a certificate and notice to close the highway, which is annexed hereto and made a part hereof. Whereas the Town Board of the Town of Amenia has the authority to close highways in the Town of Amenia to allow for public assembly pursuant to Vehicle and Traffic Law, Section 1660. Now therefore be it resolved as follows. 1, the recitations set forth above are incorporated in this resolution as it fully set forth and adopted herein. 2, that that pursuant to Vehicle and Traffic Law, Section 1660, the Town Board of the Town of Amenia hereby directs that Furnace Bank Road between Old Cross Road and Nelson Hill Road shall be closed on Saturday, May 20th, 2023, from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. for Wassaic Community Day. 3, that a copy of this resolution be sent to Jeff Parnett-Winsby, co-executive director of the Wassaic Project, the Wassaic Fire Department, the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office, the New York State Police, and the Superintendent of Highways. Can I make that motion?
Second.
Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Revelard?
Yes.
Resolution number 56, transfer of funds for April 2023. Whereas the town board has the authority to transfer funds when necessary or unanticipated to amend the budget. Whereas budget amendment in the general fund, increasing revenue line 2421.01 lease payments collected by $46,400 and decreasing revenue line 2612.01 cell tower by $32,000 and decreasing revenue line 2613.01 cell tower Parks and Recs by $14,400 for reclassification of cell tower lease payments collected for reclassification required by New York State Controller. Whereas budget amendment increasing revenue line 2421.01 lease payments collected by $43,641.98, increasing revenue line 2401.01.187 interest leases by $20,896.71, and increasing expense line 19894.01.187 other general government support by $64,538.69 for reclassification of cell tower leases required by New York State Controller. Whereas budget amendment in the general fund increasing expense line 13104.01.040, Director of Finance, CE account support by $7,000, decreasing expense line 19004.01.049, special items contingency by $7,000, for unanticipated expense of municipal accountant researching information and establishing new GISB changes for leases on cell towers by New York State Controller. Whereas the budget amendment in the general fund increasing revenue line 2089.01.148 other cultural and recreation senior trips by $1,508 and increasing expense line 677 24.01.148 programs for aging, CE senior trip events by $1,508 for a senior trip. Now therefore be it resolved, the town board authorizes a transfer of necessary budget lines to process the transactions. I make that motion.
I'll second.
Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Blackman?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Revelard?
Yes.
I was waiting for Blackman. Doyle.
Yes.
Just put him in the wrong order, like.
Yeah, I
this
was
is
like, what is that all
Why are
about?
we?
Okay.
order.
The resolution for authorizing SBI Environmental Service Engineering to conduct required lead service line inventory is tabled to the next meeting for clarification of the wording for the funding. Resolution number 57.
Want me to read it?
Go ahead.
Victoria.
My favorite word. Resolution authorizing settlement of tax certiorari proceedings commenced by Martin's Fox Hollow Farm LLC.
Oh,
Whereas there are now pending in the Dutchess County Supreme Court tax certiorari proceedings commenced in 2020, 2021, and 2022 by Martin's Fox Hollow Farm LLC regarding property located on 10-39 Fox Hollow Drive in the town of Amenia, tax map number 13200-7067-00-332636-000. seeking a reduction and correction in the 2020, 2021, and 2022 assessments for the respective tax rolls. And whereas the town assessor and the attorney of the town recommended a settlement on the tax review proceedings, now therefore be it resolved as follows. The recitations set forth above are incorporated in this resolution as if fully set forth and adopted herein. That the town board of the town of Amenia hereby approves the settlement of the tax review proceedings for the year 2020, 2021, and 2022 on behalf of the town of Amenia as they pertain to the parcel identified as tax map number 13200-0-7067-00-3326636-0000 as follows. Assessment roll 2020, original assessment 36 million, settlement assessment 21,400,000, final taxable AV $19,547,700, original ag exemption $706,900, settlement ag exemption $352,600, original forest exemption $2,884,100, settlement forest exemption $1,499,700. Values for 2021, 36 million, settlement assessment 21,400,000, final taxable AV 21,048,000. Original ag exemption $706,300, settlement ag exemption $352,000, original forest exemption $0, settlement forest exemption $0. 2022 values, original assessment $23,800,000, settlement assessment $22,400,000, final taxable AV $20,548,909, original ag exemption $351,400, settlement ag exemption $351,400, original forest exemption $1,499,691, settlement forest exemption $1,499,691. 3, that the town supervisor, town assessor, and Karen E. Hagstrom of Stenger, Diamond, and Glass LLP, attorneys of the town of Amenia, are hereby authorized to take all actions necessary and appropriate to effectuate the terms of this resolution. And I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Grevard?
Yes.
And, I'll need a motion to authorize supervisor to complete the DWSP2 application.
So moved. Second?
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
Second.
Second.
Thanks. Supervisor Prodi?
Yes.
Councilpersons Doyle?
Yes.
Gutierrez?
Yes.
Blackman?
Yes.
Grevard?
Yes.
Okay, town board discussion of CDBG grant for affordable housing at 74 Lake Amenia Road. I think we've all received all the emails from the Dutchess County Planning about all the repairs needed on this house, on this property.
Yeah, Ian, do you want to summarize the county's
Can I give a brief, you can follow up, you know that? Sure. So last meeting, the board authorized me to contact CDBG with regards to some of the contingencies that were set forth. Specific issues were really the timing when they wanted certain things done. The remediation of any lead and asbestos had to be done before purchase, at or before purchase, and the same with the subdivision. So I reached out to the county executive's office, spoke with the county attorney, and explained some of the difficulties with trying to do that. And they listened. They took it back to the department. They reviewed some of our concerns and some of the issues that were expressed, and they've basically issued a new set of contingencies, which the board it's been circulated to the board, and everyone has it. I don't know, Charlie, if you wanted to go through some of the specifics on those. I know you may have done some work, I think, since then.
Yeah, so I think the county, thank you, Ian, came back with actually something that's very beneficial to us. They ultimately are just requesting that we do a lead and asbestos risk assessment after we get into contract on the house. They will release 75, so we needed $75,000 of their grant, it's $150 total, to go towards the purchase of the property. So when they receive those funds from HUD at the end of the summer, they will release those so that the property can be purchased. And then the remaining $75,000 of that grant would be on a reimbursement basis as we rehabilitate the house. They are asking for us to, they are still maintaining to subdivide the property simultaneous with closing of the purchase. However, their total $150,000 will go towards the portion that would be the affordable housing. So they, for the most part, are saying, you know, your ARPA funds that you're going to use in cooperation with our grant will go towards the other portion of the property that would be used, hopefully in the future, for wastewater. And the third thing, which was part of their original conditions, was just that our rent max has to be 65% of the AMI, which honestly was in our first budget for this grant application, and the county actually came back and asked us to up it, which I did, and now it's back to 65. So that's not really problematic whatsoever for us. And I will say that I have contacted an asbestos risk assessor who would also do the abatement as well. It's relatively inexpensive, honestly. It's like $1,200. And a lead paint risk assessment outfit who would also do the abatement as well for anything that they found.
Which will be a lot more than $1,200.
Well, the lead paint, I mean, I feel pretty confident that they're not going to discover any lead paint in the interior of the house because the whole interior has been repainted. The way those lead paint assessments are done is through an ultraviolet light. They shine on it, and it's like this X-ray kind of thing.
But they have to do any and all painted surfaces.
Yes,
surfaces in and out.
Yes, exactly. So the outside will most likely come up with that. I will say it's interesting now. So I went through, are there any other questions around the contingencies? Because I can then sort of go into...
Well, I think there's too many of them.
Too many of the contingencies?
Yes.
Are too many of the... So there are really just three main contingencies related to the grant. It is the AMI for the rent, which is easy enough to do. There is the lead and asbestos risk assessment. And then there is addressing the inspection items. And although the list is quite large, you know, the vast majority of the items on the list are relatively insignificant. You know, putting a GFI outlet in, like, those are really simple things I do every day.
Dutchess County Planning thought they were significant enough to list.
Well, it's a home inspection.
21 of them.
It's a home inspection, so anything that needs to be addressed is listed, and there's a range of, you know, what's costly and time-consuming and what's simple and easy to do. And they're also asking that we bid this. That's pretty straightforward as well. I personally don't find anything on there to be shocking. They did want to make sure that we received some quotes for the work that needed to be done so that it would come in on, you know, the budget that we have. Our budget is actually expanded for the rehabilitation portion of this. So we have $75,000 from this grant. We have the $15,000 that we will get from the Foundation for Community Health. We've been told that that's a really straightforward award, and it's not a match. It's we'll send you a check for $15,000. We also have a little over $35,000 in the Housing Trust Fund, which can be which clearly should be used for this purpose. And there's no other expenses that are related to that trust fund as of yet. We paid for the survey of this property as well as the appraisal for this property through the Housing Trust Fund, and the $6,000 that's left there is after that payment. The Housing Trust Fund started out with $71,000. It was $61,000 from the fee in lieu of, and then the $10,000 grant award that we received over the summer. And through that total $71,000, we paid for AKRF, who did our affordable housing, workforce housing, changes to the local law, as well as the community events that we had over the summer.
Charlie, just want to clarify something. As far as subdividing the property, is there or isn't there a time limit?
The county is asking that we do it simultaneous with a closing. So since the way this would roll out is that we would negotiate terms with the seller, we would enter into a contract with the seller with certain contingencies. One of those contingencies would be we could not close until we received $75,000 from this grant award, that we would, there'd be a couple of other things. We would not be closing on the property until late summer, early fall. So we would have 6 months to work with, ultimately, it's an attorney to, and go before the planning board to subdivide the property.
Who's we?
We being the housing board. I mean, the housing board would be taking the lead on this. I mean, clearly under the supervision of the town board and yourself, but we would
Well,
be
there
coordinating.
hasn't been any supervision.
Victoria,
Not with the property owner.
Victoria, I'd
anyway.
really appreciate it if you wouldn't throw buckets of ice water on this project every time it comes up.
I am going to say anything that I feel I want to say.
Okay, I'll do the same thing.
If I don't interrupt you and say anything about anything you're saying, I expect the same courtesy.
Okay.
If I have things I'm concerned about, I am going to speak to them.
Okay.
And that's the way it is.
Fine, and I'm just concerned about the way committee people who are volunteers are talked to in these proceedings.
I'm asking questions.
Okay, I'm sorry, did you feel that we have done something outside of the, I feel that the housing board has come before the town board throughout this process to get approval for doing everything that we've done so far. In cooperation, honestly, also with the wastewater committee, since that's sort of where this parcel came from to begin with.
So Charlie, I wanted to finish my question. There was
sorry.
a second part. So in conjunction with subdividing the property, has it been estimated what the new survey would cost?
Well, I don't believe that we would have to do a new survey per se, because we have a survey. We would go through the process of subdivision, which I believe is, engaging either a surveyor or an engineer and putting that together. I mean, the town board has a lot of sway over how quickly that goes through the planning board. It would go before the planning board underneath the normal.
I just want to check with Ian on this, but most definitely there's going to have to be another survey if it's subdivided.
Yeah, you would need a new meets and bounds, because you're going to basically create 2 lots, and we'd only be purchasing, I believe, one of those 2 lots with the grant funds, right?
No, we'd be purchasing both of them with the grant funds, because, well, it depends on how you look at it. Yes, I guess technically, the back end of it would be the 75 plus whatever we decide is the amount for this affordable housing stuff would be under that, and then, remaining ARPA funds would be purchasing the other piece of the property. So I think it's a math equation. Like if the overall number here is 10, when we say this affordable housing portion is 25% of that, it's 2.5 and the other is the rest of it.
Yeah, the requirement of the CDBG grant, though, going towards the parcel that will have the unit on it, the home on it.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yes.
That's my understanding. That's how it's supposed to go.
That's section 3.1 in their letter. They say that the funds could only be used to pay for the new parcel with the house on it.
Yeah.
So who would pay for the subdivision?
Well, it would be in our budget of this. So, going back to the funding streams, it's, we have $150,000 from the CBG, we have the 200 and change thousand from ARPA funds, the $35,000 that we have in the Housing Trust Fund, and then the $15,000 coming from the Foundation for Community Health grant.
So you're saying that the subdivision would be done along with the purchase and closing?
Yes, exactly. It would be done simultaneous. We clearly would engage, I would imagine we would engage the same surveyor who did the property to begin with, because that was an arduous task to put together. And
But
all
the
of that.
subdivision would have to go through the planning board, right?
Yes, exactly. Through the same process that any subdivision would.
So the county's response to Ian starts out by reiterating why they put contingencies on this grant award to begin with, and it's, just to quote them here, there was concern, this is a quote I'm reading from the paper, there was concern that the rehabilitation expenses could be cost prohibitive, impacting the town's ability to complete the rehabilitation since the grant funds awarded under CDBG will not cover all costs necessary, etc. It goes on. But I guess we provided them with our budget, right? I mean, I saw that it was part of the grant application.
Yes.
So you put that together, and I know you worked hard on that. Given their assessment of our budget, why do they still have this pending concern? Do we have any insight into that? That we're not going to have enough money available to address all the rehabilitation items that they've...
I will say that many people who work in this portion of Dutchess County are not necessarily builders, are contractors, and I think, as was the case when the home was inspected, there was an actual certified inspector who came with a number of people from Dutchess County. The other people were not aware of a lot of things, and they brought up, you know, this happens to me frequently when I do a walkthrough with people at a house that they're buying, and they're with their inspector, and they point to every little crack, and they think the place is falling down, and the inspector's like, oh, that's nothing, that's a little settling, it's spackle, you know, and so I think that that was the case. When you look through the elements that need to be rehabbed on their list after the home inspection, there's, I mean, probably the largest ones are the windows, and not even all the windows have to be replaced. So they're clearly throwing a fear out there that, oh, you might not have enough money. And I'm coming back to the board and saying, well, we have that original budget, plus I've now found, you know, $45,000 more, which is almost 75% of our original budget. You know, the new budget now is almost $110,000 for rehabilitation. That should be significant funds to address their list from their inspection.
Do you have an updated version of that budget to include?
I'm going to put that, so I apologize because we just received this earlier this week, and so I'm halfway through. I'll be through with that over the weekend so that you'll have it. And Ian did reach back out to the county attorney, who is giving us until the next board meeting to pass a resolution. So what I want to do is put together this full budget, speak with more contractors. You know, and even us accepting this grant, just like Vicki said when it came to the electric charging station, you know, that's one element. And then if we're unable to get quotes that come within, you know, 75% of what our budget is to rehab this, you know, we don't move forward. Like, there's ways to do that. But this is a project that's really like pivotal, you know, not only to deliver.
But we of course, we don't want to misrepresent to the county that we have the funds to address.
Well, the county is saying that we still have to, they're giving us, in this response to Ian, to the town, they are giving us leeway to say, you can accept this on these terms, which one of them is contingent on you getting quotes from contractors to accomplish this work.
Right. Yeah, that was going to be my next point, and that's the number one, which I think that was very fair of them. Prior to the town taking title and prior to the county executing the grant, we must work with the landowner to perform the lead-based risk assessment as well as the asbestos risk. Do we have an idea if the owner is willing to go through that step with us?
Yeah, and really it is just giving access. I mean, the asbestos is pretty much a site inspection. There's an air quality inspection.
Yeah, I'm just, has the owner indicated that they'd be willing to allow us access to perform this?
Yeah, we can get access, yes, sir. We can get access to the property.
Okay, and then again, prior to them giving us the grant, we would then have to give them a written detailed estimate of the cost to complete everything on this list. So we'd have to get that from a contractor or someone.
Damien, the question before with regards to the quote that you had, there was, in my conversations with the county attorney, the concern is, I think there's a concern if they find lead or asbestos.
Sure.
And then if you have that, the remediation costs, when we get our quotes, we should be getting quotes and make sure that it's a municipal contract. So there's certain requirements under the the bidding that will up those costs. And if there is remediation, that's where I think the biggest concern lies, because those remediation costs, I think, can really skyrocket.
Sure, but the way that they've structured the order of operations here, we would do the test for lead and asbestos. We would get those results before we buy the property, before they issue the grant.
Correct. So part of my conversation with them is we absolutely want to do the lead assessment beforehand, because we don't want to buy a property and get caught with that. So
Right.
that was a mutual agreed. It worked out very well that we were able to get at least that cleared up.
Great. And then your updated budget, Charlie, if it could just speak to the county's requirement that grant funds solely go to purchasing the house once it's been subdivided. That's Hamlet zoning, right? So
No, it's actually rural agriculture. It's
RA.
RA, yes.
So we'd have to rezone it?
No. The town, under its comprehensive plan, has a lot of leeway in developing affordable housing.
But there's
So-
minimum lot sizes in RA, isn't there?
Well, many of the established lots that are there are smaller than the zoning would allow now. So the town has, again, based on its comp plan, which is the basis for why we do what we do and where the zoning is from, speaks explicitly to affordable housing and very strongly to, wastewater treatment as a major requirement for the hamlet. Both of which I think that the town there could be a variance for any issues that were related to that.
Yeah, I mean, we encounter this a lot where the town technically doesn't have to follow its own rules, but we try to do that all the time anyways, lest we be accused of being hypocrites.
Yeah.
But,
It's a 7-acre lot, so 7 or 8, I'm forgetting, I'm sorry. So the portion that this would be owned would be like probably 1.5, 2 acres.
And I would think that most of the houses on Lake Amenia Road and next to this.
They're about an acre, yeah.
I'm not familiar with any of the zoning in that area, so I didn't know if it was Hamlet or RR or RA, not sure.
Yeah, it's RA. It came up too because, there is, Mr. Carroll has his firewood portion of it anyway on the back of that parcel. The property owner wants, to have an agreement that he can continue doing that in some regard. And some people have brought up, they shouldn't even be doing that. Well, that is a use in RA, of forestry and logging.
Is Dutchess County Planning aware of this agreement?
Yes. Yes, they brought it up in the very beginning of our application as having some kind of worry about it being back there. But that's never, that operation that's happening behind this particular house, we brought them comfort, and it was never brought up as a contingency that would have to change. Clearly, the town would enter into an agreement with Mr. Carroll around that, him providing certain insurance and indemnity and stuff like that. For him to continue, being on that piece.
I'm sorry, I missed. So the idea is that he would continue the firewood operation post town ownership?
Yes.
What kind of liability is that for the town? What kind of liability is that for the town, Ian?
I don't know the extent of the operation or what's happening back there, but if he's cutting wood and drying it, kiln drying it, there's going to be at least sharp things and hot things, which.
So it's.
There's no kill. He has a large wood pile back there, and it seems, again, this would all be in the negotiation of what we want to do. It would be something that would be negotiated before we closed on the property as to how in which he's going to operate there. It appears now that he has a big stack of wood there. He's always had big stacks of wood that sit there. And then he takes that wood. I have a feeling they air dry there for probably several years, but that would be a conversation with him.
Yeah, there can be legal implications to that operation staying on this property as town property. We would have to look into to that issue and the parameters of what we would be trying to do there, or what you...
Okay, my last question is about HRH, and I'm just wondering if we've had more recent discussions with them about making further progress on that draft management agreement that they had sent, that we put in as part of our application.
More conversations.
Well, that draft agreement was something that our own council suggested that we probably shouldn't sign as a town, but also it was, a lot of details TBD, and I'm just wondering if HRH is on board with managing the property for us, if they're on board with the county's restriction on the income requirements.
Yeah, so I mean, we've had a number of conversations with HRH. Actually, last week we went through what the contingencies that were laid out from the county in the beginning, which they actually helped us formulate a response to. Their memorandum of understanding is actually pretty typical in that they charge a percentage of the rent, and they are responsible for managing the property. Generally, those management agreements allow for them to engage subcontractors, a plumber, an electrician, and to pay them up to a capped amount without having to reach out to the town board. It would be illogical that you would want somebody to give approval to pay for a $3,000 plumbing bill instead of fixing the leak, those kind of things. But clearly it can be negotiated. I mean, it's just kind of like a template at this point.
But I guess so back during our discussions when we were talking about how to use the ARP funds and whether or not to use them for this project, I had mentioned, at least, and I don't speak for the rest of my colleagues here, that I had a lot of concerns about the town being a landlord, sort of, even to HRH, right? So even in a sort of sublease capacity, us owning land that we are then subleasing or leasing to another entity like HRH that then would sublease it to others. And I think
I believe the setup is HRH is more the management company.
HRH is the management. And, so let me just, if I can, one about the ARPA funds. This is a timing cash flow element of this. The ARPA funds, let's call it $200,000. We are due more than, let's see, what is it? Probably a little shy of $600,000 for our fee in lieu of coming into our housing trust fund that we will receive over the next 18 months or 2 years, which can go to pay back those ARPA funds, however, so I would like the town board to look at that as really just more a cash timing issue.
Understood, but...
And the second, you're totally right.
Hold on, just before we move off the first point. I mean, you mentioned two things, obviously the payments that were coming, the fee in lieu of payments coming from the silo development, but also there was another grant that you mentioned earlier on that you expected that we would get, but we obviously haven't yet still received it. And just in general, it's challenging to make sort of financial decisions based on monies you haven't yet received, right? So I understand that it's just a cash flow. It's ideally just a cash flow shuffle, but at the moment we don't have those. We don't have either of those funds in hand, right? So.
No, we don't. But Silo's clearly not stopping building, and their fee in lieu of once they receive COs for the next 25% of their market rate housing, we will receive our next tranche. So I think that, yes, that's a receivable to us, but I would not call that like a bad debt. Like, I don't think that there's any risk that we're not going to receive that. The $15,000 from the Foundation for Community Health, no, we haven't received that. I also don't think that I wouldn't call that a risky grant. I mean, it's an organization, they have very low barriers for those grants, and this is right in what they want to fund.
Yeah, I don't disagree with those assessments. I'm just saying that it's hard to make a calculation if we don't have those funds actually in the bank. But you were about to make a second point.
Well, because it
is,
yes, the town would be owning a piece of rental property, and I encourage the town board to assume that risk. I don't think it's a great risk, but to assume that, because we know that the hamlet of Amenia will not be able to support any significant economics or any housing without wastewater. And this is the only parcel of land that has been identified as suitable for a siting for treatment. So we're at a really unique crossroads. I mean, after we finish this discussion, we'll go into the wastewater committee's recommendation to move on to its next phase. Well, that is predicated on us purchasing this parcel, you know, so it really is, you know, it's the stone in the middle of it all. And we're trying to work really hard to bring it together, and it is a lot of desperate pieces, and I understand there is a little bit of faith involved in it.
So the, understood about the wastewater, but just focusing on the housing component for now, have we had conversations with HRH about possibly purchasing this smaller lot that we subdivide off?
We've had some very casual conversations with them. You have to remember that HRH it doesn't have a huge funding stream. I mean, they get grants for their the housing that they produce. You know, they have invested in the parcel just north of Town Hall across the street, and they're in the midst of that. They have several other things. They are actually moving out of the building of things and want to be more in the managing, like what they would do with this envisioned property, and connecting developers with funding and sort of being the advisor to that. So they don't necessarily want to be in the owning game.
Ian, could we mortgage the property to them?
To
HRH?
Hudson River Housing, if they're not interested in being an owner, then I
I'm
would
just saying,
say-
if in the event that they were, would there be some way for us to structure a payment?
There are ways where you can purchase property through the town and transfer that property to not-for-profits for their ownership, use, and there'd be restrictive covenants all within those deeds. But there is a way to do that. Whether we could do that in the context of a CDBG grant, I don't know.
No.
Conceptually,
yeah,
the town can buy property as a pass-through to a not-for-profit to operate affordable housing.
I'm just
I
like, I
believe
gotta
that
say,
that can be
I'm
done.
deeply worried about us being in a sort of landlord position. And so if there was a way for us to be creative and to find an owner and assist them with taking ownership of that along the lines of what Ian's just described or some other mechanism.
Damien, the management company has its own liability as well. So I know, Ian, maybe you want to speak a little bit about what that may be like.
What are you referring to?
HRH's liability for insurance coverage, you know, for a property they manage.
Well, they would require to have all of that, particularly if they're doing, they would be doing all the landlord or all the tenant screening, right?
Yes, yes.
So that's really what they'd be tasked with here, is screening, making sure that the economic levels, the need-based qualifications are all met for whoever comes in and rents the units. So they would have to have all their own insurances, which I'm sure they do. I'm sure, because I don't believe this is their first situation where they're doing this. So I would imagine they have that. We would have to look at that as well as just the memorandum of understanding. I remember we kind of looked at that last time, Damien, and there was questions. I don't remember off the top of my head what they were, but we had a lot of questions on that. I do recall that.
And we have a lot of time. I want to acknowledge that I understand your concern, and it is a concern. You know, it is just something that the board will have to get comfortable with, or at least they'll have to acknowledge this is a concern, but the trade-off is greater than what that is. Yeah, and to go back to, there are a lot of parameters around advertising for tenants when you accept HUD money. And so Hudson River Housing does that. That's their wheelhouse. And so that would be their responsibility, advertising and then screening potential tenants.
In that sense, it's a huge benefit for the town to have them do that, because it's something that the town, that's something the town would absolutely, well, in my opinion.
I just have nightmare scenarios of like somebody coming into Dawn's office and yelling at her because they think their rent's too high. that's the nightmare scenario that I have.
And to give you an idea, so the HUD's 65% of AMI for a 3-bed house like this is $1,600, and that actually includes utilities. So I think I would hope somebody. I mean, clearly that would be a lot of money if it wasn't 5 people. But it really does speak to the economics of our town, and that so many people are rent burdened here, and being able to just deliver 1 unit of housing is remarkable, outside of all the other things that this particular project allow us in the future to do. But like with the memorandum of understanding and all of that stuff, we're almost a year away from being able, from doing that. So we clearly have a lot of time to negotiate that with HRH.
Yep. I was supportive of us pursuing this property. I would like to see a plan to have the residential portion of the subdivided property sort of off the town's hands, and that would sort of predicate my continued support of this effort. But I'm supportive, and I think it's a good thing to do.
So what I will do, and then I can work with Ian. Again, it's a long ramp here, right? So our next step is just really getting comfortable with being able to pass a resolution to accept these contingencies from the county. So I will get you guys a budget for a revised budget that details the remediation of all of the elements on the home inspection.
This
Great.
may be really basic, and maybe I should have seen that somewhere, but at $1,600 a month, we should be able to pay for the repairs and keep up with, Hudson River Housing feels that this is going to be a cash positive venture. Not that we want to make money off of affordable housing, we just want to make sure that
you cover your costs.
That we cover our
yes.
costs.
No, that's a very, it's a good question.
Okay.
I will include the operating budget as well, which takes the rent. You reduce it for some vacancy, but I think once you have a tenant in place, you won't really have any vacancy.
Right.
And then it lists all of the expenses, and there's actually a percentage of contingency that builds up a
reservoir,
a capital reserve fund,
right.
Yes, for repairs and
Right.
things of that nature. Yeah, you have to
Okay.
realize what's very helpful for the town, and maybe we'll work with Ian creatively. There might be a way to off-road the risk if that's really the concern. But the town doesn't pay real estate taxes, and so that's very helpful. That's one expense that this property doesn't have.
Right.
Is that?
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. All right.
But since the town is going to be the property owner, shouldn't the property owner be negotiating with our town attorney?
Sure. I've had conversations with that's the only reason that I'm in the mix, is that I've been speaking with the owner for almost a year now, I guess. Yeah. And that sort of brings me to the next thing. It's one of those things where the owner has wanted some pricing. They want to know some terms. And so last week, once we got the grant, I said, here, let's have a conversation related to that. Clearly, everything is subject to the town board's approval of all of those terms, right?
It's the town attorney's approval of all the terms, whatever they are, and he should be made aware of them now if we're going to be a property owner.
Yep.
I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else? Ian, were you about to say something?
I'm just reading this and trying to figure out the timing here of when we need that estimate by. I'm reading that to say that we need this before they're going to, it says prior to execution of the county's grant agreement. So we might need those estimates sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I think that we need them before they do the agreement, but what they are asking for by what is it, May 4th is the next town board meeting, is just a resolution for the town to agree to
These terms.
These terms, yes. Which, honestly, the town agreeing to these terms, you know, it gives us a lot of leeway because we have to get a lot of different things together. We're not entering into an agreement, a grant agreement with the county.
We are agreeing to, sorry. If we do agree to their requirements, we are agreeing to take on some costs associated with some of those tests. They seem minimal, and I've heard you speak to where they would come from the budget, but I think that we would need some clarity on what costs we're signing up to by agreeing to the county's contingencies on this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I think that the two are the asbestos and lead-based paint risk assessment, which I would propose that those be paid out of the Housing Trust Fund, which there's money there and that's what it's for. And so then that would just be where those come from now. And I will I'll have the quotes on those probably by.
But was that money in the Housing Trust Fund that we'd use for this, was that earmarked for other?
Well, it's all part of that budget. So, I mean, I just took, these 4 different funding sources to come up with the total. And then, there's all of the expenses. And one of those expenses is these 2 assessments.
Okay.
Another expense in my original budget, or 2 of them, was the survey and the appraisal, which we paid that out of the Housing Trust Fund. And I've now, when I circulate this budget, it's been removed from that budget because it was paid for through the trust fund.
Okay. Sorry, there's a lot of dumb questions. Caesar.
No, none of these are dumb questions. I mean, I'm just steeped in it, so a little too much.
So none of this has been presented to our insurance carrier about becoming a property owner? I think that's something we need to do.
That's a good idea.
Yep. You will have to have an insurance policy on the premises with a renter's endorsement, I would imagine.
In my budget, I think that, yeah, and tell me who you want to take the lead on getting a quote for that. I mean, I've assumed
I'll take care of that.
Okay, that'll be great. The operating budget assumes like $1,600 or $1,700 for that, but it would be good to really confirm that that is in line. Yeah. Okay.
So is the idea that at the next meeting, we would need to make a resolution or approve a resolution to that the board is okay with these terms? Is that the next step?
Yes. By the next meeting, we would have to have a resolution indicating the board's agreement to proceed under these terms. They would do, based on this conversation, if the board directs, I will go back to the county and they will reissue a new set according to this, a new award letter with all the contingencies set forth. I'll get that, I'll circulate that to the board. Charlie will continue to work on the updated
budget and timeline.
Budget and timeline. I can get some clarity on when they really want that, because I'm not really sure when they want that, but I want to give you enough lead time to get that. If you and then they'll have to approve that as well, I imagine.
Well, we also need that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the
I'll get that to you shortly.
Okay.
But it'll be definitely before the Monday.
Ian also needs to hear from the property owner about the price of this parcel, and also any other terms that we're unaware of.
I can work with Charlie on that in the housing board.
Well, you need to, because we're not going to be property owners unless our town attorney talks to the property owner.
Charlie, what about, I don't recall in the HRA agreement What if there's a non-payment? What if there's an eviction that's necessary? How is that handled? Do they handle that? Do they pay that? Do we pay it? How's that work?
I would imagine that if there's a non-payment, that I'll look through their agreement again, but there'd be an attorney involved, and so those would either be reimbursable expenses, I would imagine, or they would refer it to.
Ian, I have the MOU up. What was your question?
I don't recall I don't recall it being in there. My question was whether or not they would be handling the expenses for an eviction if one was necessary.
Don't we have to have an agreement with them first?
Yeah, but that
We don't have one, right?
no, that memo was kind of like a draft. Essentially, I believe that was kind of a draft that was submitted.
It's kind of their boilerplate, so I would imagine, I mean, Ian brings up a good point. To the extent that there's non-payment after several months, what's the process? Do they begin those proceedings, or do they reach out to, the town attorney to do that? Or,
Yeah, who's responsible for doing that? Are they responsible as a management company doing it? Do we do it? Are the lost expenses recoupable?
So the part that we flagged as problematic was the indemnification in the MOU. I realize this is draft and boilerplate, and again, that's why it'd be great to see something more specific with them. But yeah, I think it's worth you going through it again. The indemnification.
Charlie, is it possible to get something more
Yeah,
from them?
I think maybe if you guys
the
want
board?
to email me all of your questions or concerns
good
related to that, I can, I'll assemble them all and present them to them.
That's a
get a
very big
response.
issue because of the good cause eviction laws that are pending, I believe. I don't know if they've been voted on yet by New York State, but it's going to be very costly for evictions coming up, more so than now.
Yeah, I think, yes, I agree. This is affordable housing. The whole idea behind this housing is that you make it affordable so that people can actually pay their rent and not be cost burdened. Evictions in New York State we live in a state that's very tenant centric, right? And so therefore it does become, time consuming.
It says, Ian, to your point, the owner would acknowledge that the owner would acknowledge the obligation to employ attorneys approved by the owner for the purpose of enforcing owner's rights under leases and rental agreements and instituting legal action on behalf of the owner, to pay agent for associated administrative costs and doing legal papers, and for court appearances with attorney. It's a little
awkward.
The town would be responsible.
Yeah. It sounds like it's the same way that we do it with any vendor, except here there's not, they're not authorized to start to hire a plumber up to a certain amount, but that it would be reviewed, passed along to the town.
If they want to come in and talk to us about it too, that might be a good way to do it. Just have them come in during a meeting. Oh, okay. I don't have any further comments. Have I said that enough?
No, this was good. I'm sure everybody wants to go. Victoria, you keep moving on to the
Yes, go ahead.
wastewater. So,
Charlie, just to interrupt. So I am then, the direction from the board is to contact the county attorney. We're okay with these provisions, have them reissue a new award and prepare a resolution for next meeting? Is that, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yep.
Excuse me, I raised a question which we didn't get an answer to, or...
Excuse me.
The question of taxes was brought up. I understand being owned by the town, there would not be taxable. But what about school taxes? And there didn't seem to be an answer to that. Also, if there are not school taxes being paid, how does that affect, and what effect does that have on the school system? So that's something we should hear about as well.
Town doesn't pay Weebitech school taxes.
School taxes. I believe the town would probably be exempt from all of the taxes.
All taxes.
We don't pay it on these buildings.
I mean, most renters don't pay taxes either.
The landlords.
The landlords do.
Better than the rent.
The school system's got to pay for it.
Do you want a job here at the town of Amenia being a landlord?
Okay, I'm sorry. So I'll go on to the wastewater committee. So the next phase of the wastewater project is to engage an engineer and an attorney for the map plan and report and environmental review. Map plan and report is based off of the current engineering report we have now. It lays out what the district will be, ultimately what the user fees will be, and then we'll have a petition attached to it. So the wastewater committee reached out to 5 different engineers. We received 2 proposals, which I circulated to the town board earlier. Ty and Bond, unfortunately, their plate is full, so they couldn't. It was actually very difficult to even get them to respond to me. Ty and Bond recommended LaBerge. And then in our research, we also found the way in which we looked for engineering firms was to look at other sewer projects that were happening in our area. So LaBerge did the engineering report for Pauling, and CT Mall did the report for Red Hook. Both of those were extensions of current. Extensions are sort of different things, but already with an existing sewer system of some sort. We also asked for references, and so Jim Wright spoke to the reference for LaBerge, which was at Pauling, who had dealt with them. They had glowing things to say about LaBerge. They were very responsive. Their report was really, really clean. And they also have a big focus on funding sources. Like, that's the way in which they approach their projects, because ultimately, if you can't get funding, you can't build it. And so that's the way in which they approach all of their work. CT Mall, the Red Hook people had good things to say about their engineering work, but they felt as if they had kind of dropped the ball when it came to supporting their grant writing effort around there. So the wastewater committee is recommending that we move forward with LaBerge. They are a little bit more expensive, but honestly, after speaking with their references, it's not a big difference, and LaBerge is still kind of within the average range of what this type of project would cost. Our engineering report had estimates for this work that the town board, I believe, actually incorporated into its 2023 budget, so this work is being budgeted for. So that's our recommendation to move forward with LaBerge for the engineering work. I can take any questions.
Yeah. Maybe this is a dumb question, but the district has been identified?
So the district is ultimately made up of users or parcels, and yes, that is already identified and laid out in the engineering report.
So
the tie and bond.
The tie and bond report.
That's tied to the water district.
But
it overlaps, but there are parcels that there are people in the water district that aren't in this proposed sewer district, and there are people in the sewer district that are not in the water district. So they overlap but are not equal.
And it's not metered usage?
It is, yes. It would be metered usage. So the folks that are not in the water district would have a meter added to the outflows of their.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah. Right. But it is all measured usage. Damien, did you have a question?
No, I was just saying that was the preliminary district.
Yes.
It's not finalized.
Right.
It's not.
And these 2 budgets, these 2 proposals from these engineers are based solely on using all of that work. I mean, if we were asking them to add, which we may, we're doing some outreach on 2 different roads who are not currently included, but people have said they want to be included, that would change the scope of this. But this currently is based off of that budget and those parcels that are in the preliminary engineering report.
How dependent is their work on us securing the property at Lake Amenia?
Well, that engineering report is based off of putting the site there. So, I mean, we can engage them. If that doesn't work out, clearly we would have to change directions in some regard. But at the same time, we kind of have a bit of a timing issue because we're trying to, kind of keep this moving forward. The BIL money is over a course of 5 years, and we're already into year 2 of that, moving into year 3. So we're very cognizant of those funds. And this process takes a while. So this would probably be, a 6-month process, 6 months. And it's done hand in hand with an attorney. So we are waiting for one more proposal from an attorney, which we'll present to you guys next time. Because this has to be, the map planning report is actually reviewed and approved by the state controller.
And the LaBerge scope was, remind me how much it was again?
It was 27. We also went back to 27,550.
You got them lower, didn't you? Because they originally were
We did, yes. And just a bit about that, I wanted to bring up the
27,550. Yeah.
budget really quick. Let me see, where did I put it? We had I think there's like 50,000 that's in our budget for all of this kind of work with the seeker and things of that nature. And I will say this, so the attorney at, oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting a gnat. What was I going to say? I'm sorry, I lost my
They're
train of
throughout the
thought.
building. It's not just here.
Okay, it's just not me.
Throughout the building.
Okay, it's that time of year.
All right, well, given that the property at the center of the prior conversation is central to the work that we would be paying this engineering firm to do, my recommendation would be to hold off on spending money until we have more clarity on the, I'm not saying until we close on the property, just more clarity on the feasibility of procuring that property with the county, which we should have in a matter of weeks or months, I would assume. So that would be my recommendation here to the board.
Well, I guess my only concern would be that if we do that, we're again pushing the project. That was actually my concern 2 years ago, and the reason that I actually ran for town board, because it took 11 months to get the town board to come up with the money to hire Ty and Bond, and now we're a year behind where we would have been in terms of using the federal funds. So the further we push this back, it just seems to me the less likely we're going to get as much money by the end.
That's true, but the other side of that coin is that we're going to spend $27,000 on an engineering firm to look at a property that we don't own yet, which could be just a waste of $27,000.
Well, I guess that's true. Ty and Bond had to do that too.
But no, Time Bond was doing an assessment of available properties based on, what was out there for sale, what town owned. That made sense at the time,
But their design was based on that property, is what I'm saying. The system they designed was based on that property.
Yeah, the whole. I mean, it's true. The whole system. We have to make some assumptions, and I completely agree with you that. Okay, well, this is a thing, and if we don't get that thing, this changes the scope of this particular phase. But I would recommend that we not stop ourselves from moving forward because of that one variable. I mean, the town has budgeted for this work to be done. It actually has a budget that's larger than what this cost is to continue it moving forward.
And I believe the board at the last meeting approved money to test the water for the new wells at a site that we don't own. So there's sort of a what do you call that?
Yeah, but that's the same like paying to test the lead and asbestos at this other site that we don't own. We're testing to test the viability of whether or not we want to purchase that. That makes sense to me. I
hear you.
I appreciate your
I'm
perspective.
not saying it's not. I'm just saying that, we We have a committee that is very dedicated to continuing to move this project forward, and we are
Understood.
very cognizant that for over 50 years that the town has tried and been unable to bring it to fruition. And we are at a very specific point in history where there's a significant amount of money specifically for disadvantaged communities such as ours to be able to create, municipal wastewater. I mean, it's interesting that 4 parcels along our main street were just sold today. They just closed today. Wow. And those parcels, nothing can change about them. They can't have more people in their restaurant. They can't have more apartments above them unless we get municipal wastewater. Sharon talks about the hamlet of Wassaic and how, keeping it the way it is and all of that. And we understand that we clearly will probably need to spend $100,000 for an engineering report for Wassaic because you can't do things the way you could do them 50 years ago, But those walls along that riverbed will have to be replaced. And so that's what I'm saying here. The only way that we will be able to give our community the ability to support homes, businesses, a downtown. What the rec committee is doing is remarkable. I mean, I think we can all envision, a town square where all of that happens that's surrounded by relatively vacant stores because they have no sewer. So that's all I'll say on that. We're having discussion. You guys will clearly either vote or not vote on it next time.
Yeah, I appreciate the color and the big picture stuff, and I personally don't disagree with any of it. I'm not suggesting we don't try to do something about that and realize that ultimate goal. I'm just suggesting it would be prudent to wait a week or a month to get more clarity from the county to know whether or not we can actually procure this parcel. Without that county grant, we don't currently have the ability to procure that parcel. So,
well, we have the county grant. The only contingencies that are in the grant here are, those 4 things that I mentioned before. It's the risk assessment, it's the AMI, that we will do this abatement. And I will, look, you got to put a lot of faith in me, I suppose, but I'm not a quitter, and I'm going to find a solution if we don't have enough money. But I think $100,000 to deal with, sorry. The updates that have to happen to the house, I think, is significant. And I will find more grant money if I have to, but I think that it will be enough. Just because it's run really late, do you mind if I'll go on to the Housatonic Valley Association? Claire was here earlier. This was the other recommendation that the wastewater committee had. So a way to move our IUP score. So the board had the engineering report submitted to the state last year to be put on their intended use plan to get federal funds. You have to be on the state's intended use plan. We are on there. You have to also score above a specific funding line. We are below that funding line. That's not an uncommon thing. Millerton is also underneath their funding line. We're kind of in tandem doing what they are with us. One way you can move that is by demonstrating that water bodies in your area are impaired. So the Housatonic Valley Association is uniquely qualified to do water testing, and we received we asked for and got a proposal for them to do water sampling in the hamlet. Ultimately, you're testing for really 2 things, heightened nitrogen levels and E. coli. So they would do that over the course of 4 to 6 events, so times that they would go out and test, and they would test 4 to 6 different spots. So we are recommending that the town board approve this proposal for them to do this testing. And that was circulated as well by email. I will say there are very few organizations that actually do this kind of testing. You can get, Marco could attest, like there's people, he can take water out of a well and go and get it tested, but to actually have an outfit that will go and has been certified by the state to take sampling and then send it to a lab has been difficult for us to find. And we feel, especially since Amenia is a member of the 10 Mile, there's a 10 Mile Association, I think, that's part of this. It just feels like a really good fit and that has a lot of weight. Hey, and their test results could come, well, they are doing the sampling, meaning they're collecting the water. They are sending those samples to a certified testing facility in New York. It may come back that there is not heightened E. coli or heightened nitrogen. We hope there is, because that will help us in trying to...
Did Millerton do that?
I'm sorry?
Did Millerton?
They are, so I spoke to Chris, and they are planning on doing something similar to that. When Jim spoke to Red Hook, it was the deputy supervisor, I don't think he's there anymore. They ultimately drilled wells. They went and they drilled 5 wells. You know, and that's a good example of, so probably each well was maybe $5,000 or something, you know, so $25,000. But you have to realize that that's a drop in the bucket if you're getting, you know, $18 million to do your system.
Right.
So I think that this is where, you know, a little bit of investment can really contribute to the community. Are there any questions about this?
What was that amount, Charlie, for the testing?
For the testing, you know, it changed a bit. I think that their current one is 10. It might be a little, I have a printout. I don't have the PDF in front of me. I think it came down, maybe it was 87.5, something like that. And honestly, the majority of that is just the testing facility. I want to say it's maybe $200 per sample. So, you know, if you do 5, it's 25 samples if it's over, you know, 5 sampling events. And those sampling, we would want to begin those as the weather warms, so beginning sort of May and probably go through, you know, July. It's when it's most active. To get into the little weeds, some people, you know, we have a lot of ag runoff as well, and there's a lot of nitrogen in the ag runoff. But the state, in looking at, which is ultimately the EPA, they don't really differentiate the difference between what possibly could be ag runoff and what possibly could be human sewer runoff. So as long as we can demonstrate that we have heightened nitrogen and E. coli, would be helpful.
Carey Institute did some sampling of water quality on the Weebatuck section of the creek along South Amenia Road, probably over 5 years, I think, because they were looking into the, you know, the mussels that were declining in that population in that Weebatuck Creek. Anyway, I just wonder if they don't happen to, I remember nitrogen being a problem because we have dairy farms and animals going down into the creek or having access, and the water runoff into that. So I don't know if maybe they have some, but they're old now, I mean, 5 years ago. So I don't know what the cutoff would be, but maybe I should talk to the HVA and see if anything that we collected could be utilized, those data sets.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be good. Okay.
So presumably that we'd have to approve that in a resolution next time as well? We'd have to vote on that?
Yes.
And is that too far away from the proposed sewer district is the problem?
For your stuff?
Yeah.
I think that would be data that could be submitted to HVA for analysis to see if there was any kind of trends or anything of that nature.
If that's
yeah.
just too far
we,
from
we
the
really are
source.
we want to
I'm
point
guessing
them.
we're going to be right in the hammer.
Yeah, you know,
That's
it's
right.
we want a sampling event probably right outside of Cumbies.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and so
Yep.
places where there have been anecdotal evidence. Well,
Obvious.
that's not anecdotal. I mean, their septic has been failing for years.
Oh, you have to
And
just snip.
along Broadway, I mean, wherever the nearest body of water is to the houses on
Yeah.
Broadway
Yeah.
with failed septic.
That would
Yeah.
be the place. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Charlie.
Town board comments?
We don't have to deal with this tonight, but I did send out a suggestion about the Stoneleaf parking and heard crickets, so if you all have something to say about that, it'd be good to hear back.
I read it. I thought it was interesting. Do you want to summarize your proposal?
Yeah, just that instead of trying to deal with it on a sign-by-sign and bumper sticker basis, that it would probably make more sense. It seemed to me, after thinking about this for a while, that it would make more sense just to have a big sign at the entry that explains that it's a town hall lot, and there are 11 spaces reserved for Stoneleaf employees and guests between X and Y hours, Monday through Friday. Because I think that makes it clear to anyone who drives in that it's a town lot and that we've assigned 11 spots, but we don't want the whole lot to get jammed up.
At minimum, I think it would be useful to have signage at the entrance to that town lot that makes it clear that it's not municipal parking, primarily for the benefit of the planning board. But that's a joke. No joke.
It's
no
not
worries.
funny.
I think it would be helpful. I can't think of who else regularly uses that lot. I would imagine that folks who come in to like park there to take their kids to the playground, that would be a town hall use. They would qualify. I just wouldn't want to put people off, like, who think it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but again, I just also don't want the town to be taken advantage of, which is the way it feels to me right now. And that seemed like the cleanest way to do it, by just having a clear sign at the entry, rather than obsessing too much about signing each space and, you know, making them show some sticker identification.
It's never going to work. I mean, that isn't going to work. So general signage that, I don't know what the best solution is, because they're unwilling to clearly, once and for all, you know, put a sticker on 11 employees' cars. So you know, you're never going to know who actually is in that parking lot.
Well, at least it reminds them that they're, you know, overstaying their welcome, or sort of going beyond what the town agreed
Yeah, the
to.
sign could be helpful, and also delineating, you know, the time frame that they agreed to, right? There was an agreement of time operations, so that would be nice to have it clearly outlined. And
yeah, I think it was 7 to 5 or 7:30 to 5:30.
so everybody's clear.
And only Monday through Friday.
Yeah. Is that another negotiation?
I have some legal comments to the board on that, which I think we should discuss in executive session, as it would be legal advice as to the agreement that exists.
Okay.
So
we don't have to do that now in light of the hour. We can do that next time.
yeah, we can put it on the agenda next time if that's...
Is there any other town board comment?
I'll try and be brief. Not easy, but I did email everybody a suggestion that since our typical theater arts professional instructor is not necessarily going to be available for the fall, that I looked into a second opportunity, which was something I'd always thought would be wonderful to have here. If you've ever seen Arm of the Sea Theater, it's life-size puppets, very imaginative, combines art, music, cultural, history, very entertaining for all kids through adults. Every age enjoys those programs. And believe it or not, when I explained what I was looking for, they said, we actually have a program that you might be interested in, and it's called Into the Light, where they collaborate with Vaniver Caravan, which is a company of dancers who travel all over the world. They are people I've always been interested in trying to hire because they work particularly with children. So they would be willing to do their program for the same amount that I've used for our free performing arts program, in which they would certainly perform Into the Light on our stage. I have to send them the dimensions if everybody's in favor of that, and see if they can, their puppets and paraphernalia will fit on the stage. I believe they will. I've seen them several times, and I'm pretty sure our theater will work. And then they would also spend 4 consecutive free workshops working with students from the local area to have them be a part of the performance. And I sent you a link to other schools. Beacon is a fixture. They have a bunch of third graders that they work every year, and they represent, you know, they do a great job. Beacon is a beacon of hope, but we would do a simple introductory program for this fall. And I've already found dates, times, the budget fits, and the grant that I have yet to write, but I want to write, would include this so that we could subsidize it as we have in the past with Berkshire Taconic Community Foundation's Northeast Fund. So if I hear nobody is opposed to it, I will continue writing it.
I think it's a great idea. Go
Okay,
for it.
thank you.
I don't have
Okay.
a problem with it. I think anything we can offer
anybody-
our youth is a wonderful idea.
Is that less sessions than the program?
Yes,
the dance
okay, that's a
program?
good point. It is a
Well, I wasn't
wonderful.
criticizing.
No, I
Asking.
think it's a trade-off, right? Is that they are very, I mean, they're world-class. Both Arm of the Sea and Vandiver Caravan are phenomenal
Sounds great.
companies that have melded together. I couldn't believe the price was affordable for us. And the reality, they'll have 4 workshops, but they will be integrated into the performance. They will have professional, performers, and they'll be a part of this in a modest way, but it will be, for kids to be able to perform on stage, they love it.
Yeah, sounds terrific.
So
And do we need to do a motion to approve that? Because it's a change?
We should
already
probably-
approved.
I can still call
We
it an
already made the
ES.
motion for her to apply for the grant. Does it matter which
We did it
program?
last year.
Yeah, you guys did a resolution last year.
Oh, I don't have time for a
I don't
resolution.
recall- I don't
I will have to
recall
make a
we did.
motion.
I have a question, though. Being on a library board, not Amenia's library board, we often try to coordinate our children's programs with other organizations around. Have you checked with the Amenia Library on their programs for children?
Like what they offer?
Yes.
I
If they're
have
doing-
seen some of their
Yeah.
things and some of the things that we're offering from the recreation, but I don't think they offer a free theater arts program.
Okay.
No. You need a theater, really, and we do have one, so
Mm-hmm.
it's,
Yeah, this is something we offer every year, a free program.
So they're coming in and they're going to run the program for free.
And the money's in the budget.
yeah, we
It's
already
already
have it
budgeted.
budgeted.
She just
It's
wants to
just
apply
a
for the grant.
different,
Oh,
instead of
oh.
hiring an instructor, I'm hiring a company which has instructors, right? I mean, I don't,
Okay.
it's the same thing, basically. I'm writing for the
Right.
same amount, it's the same cost, and it's already budgeted. So whatever I get in the grant will just offset the budgeted expenses.
So this
Well,
is a
we already
motion to...
approved you to apply for the
I
grant.
mean, we
so
did it
go
at
right
budget
ahead.
time. Yeah, okay.
Just go for it, Vicki.
Thank you. So the last thing is that I had said that I would be ready to make a motion to authorize the town of Amenia to apply for that local flood analysis, at least to start the process with HVA, which, as you know, you've heard all night tonight, it's an engineering feasibility study to develop a range of flood risk mitigation strategies for the hamlet of Wassaic. Are you guys ready to authorize us to go ahead and move forward?
We need to do a resolution for that, don't we?
Yeah, I think that should be done by
A lot of
resolution.
times,
We
Vicki, these
should-
grants required, they want to see the resolution as part of the grant
Okay.
application.
Yeah.
So we have
it's probably
time.
better, yeah, we have time.
Yeah.
It's
So-
not due to July 29.
Let me just say, Ian, there's the heart of the resolution, if you want to put it together.
Where did this come from?
I took parts of it out of it's HVA's description of what they need from the town to move forward with their flood.
Oh, here, okay.
And those are just pieces that I picked out that I thought that would be part of the considerations, right? We know there's a 25% match. I don't know that it's going to be 150,000, but they said 100,000, so I would suggest that we say a maximum of 150,000. I don't know what it costs to do a
There's a
study like that.
program information that was circulated too. I can look
I can
at that.
forward
If there's
that.
questions, I
Yeah.
can,
Yeah, yeah,
I'll review it.
okay. That's all I
Just
have.
so we're covered for the application.
Yeah, no, I think I think we have time.
Yeah, we have plenty of time.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Discussion.
Oh, come on. Hey,
One in every crowd.
Victoria,
Yes.
Victoria, could you use that gavel on him, please?
Doyle.
Yes.
Gutierrez.
Yes.
Blackman.
Yes.
Revelard. It's
Yes.
10 PM. Do you know where your children are? It's 10 PM.